Chapter 91. Hu Zhongning's heart began to palpitate, but Yang Qindong did not notice. At this time he was thinking, after scheming against Shisheng tonight, what would his brother, Xining, do if he found out? How would he put out the fire? How would he do it step by step? He must have offended them, but how could he not find an opportunity to get angry? As for that Wang Zhen, would he step in and interfere? Would he be forced to make a move under the influence of benefits? What if Wang Zhen did not care? If that was the case, he could only take the risk and get rid of Xining and Shisheng early. But if he did that, it would be impossible for him not to attract attention. Yang Qindong was still thinking, but Hu Zhongning had been holding back for a long time. Finally, he could not take it anymore. After smacking his lips, he decided to take the initiative to speak. For the sake of his daughter's happiness, what was wrong with giving the other party a way out? Hu Zhongning had already thought of what to say and was slowly opening his mouth. At this time, the sound of running suddenly came from the distance. The sound of footsteps was especially loud in the dark night and attracted the attention of Yang Qindong and Hu Zhongning. Knowing that the person in question had appeared, Yang Qindong immediately reacted and shouted according to his plan. "Who are you? This is a place of great fortune. Stop." His voice was like thunder, and it was hard to imagine that it came from the mouth of a scholar like Yang Qindong. This shout was so loud that Hu Zhongning, who was at the side, only felt his eardrums hurt from the shock. How could he still think of asking anything? On the other hand, the newcomer was far away, so he wasn't affected much. Seeing a young man in green shouting there, he quickly responded, "Who are you?" "This official is Yang Qindong, the crown prince's horse servant." "Who are you?" "Stop." Yang Qindong had already seen the other party's attire with the help of the moonlight. He knew the other party's identity, but he still asked and shouted for the second time. The person who came was Shisheng. Since he was a Qianhu of the Embroidered Uniform Guard, the Embroidered Uniform Guards and the East Faction Guards wouldn't stop him. Since they were all part of the same system, he would still give them some face. Not to mention that Shisheng had rushed here with an anxious look on his face, giving people the impression that he had received an important mission. Therefore, no one would be foolish enough to stop him. Shisheng smoothly entered the interior of the Yangjia village. Along the way, he also learned about Yang Qindong's identity from his subordinates. It was just a matter of being promoted to a secondary class rank 5 official position because of the emperor's favor. There was nothing to be afraid of. Although he had Yang Rong as his father, that old man had been dead for many years. He was someone who could even bully the current duking, so why would he be afraid of a little brat? It was precisely because he knew Yang Qindong's background that Shisheng was no longer afraid. What he wanted was to find this person and teach him a lesson, letting him know his methods. Then, it would be much easier to ask him to hand over Madame Shui and the others. As soon as he entered the Yangjia village, he asked his colleagues where Yang Qindong was. When he learned that Yang Qindong was drinking with Hu Zhongning, he hurried over. Because he was too anxious, his subordinates were left dozens of meters behind him. When he came from afar, he heard a young man shouting. Then, when he knew that this person was his target, Yang Qindong, Shisheng was overjoyed. Without answering, he waved the embroidered spring saber in his hand and rushed straight to Yang Qindong. "Ah, what are you doing?" Yang Qindong's eyes were fixed on Shisheng. He was going to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. When he saw that the other party didn't say anything and waved his saber, he stepped back first and shouted, "What are you doing? This is a place of great, auspicious holy objects. I am also an official of the imperial court. The emperor personally appointed me as the crown prince. What are you going to do?" Yang Qindong's panic-stricken appearance was a perfect representation of a scholar who saw a soldier and was unable to reason with him. This scene was also seen by Hu Zhongning, who was at the side. The aftershock of the vibration of the eardrum was completely absorbed. At this moment, Hu Zhongning also realized that someone was going to harm Yang Qindong. How could he let it go? If something happened to the 6th young master, how could his daughter argue with him? Not to mention that he happened to be at the scene. Whether it was public or private, he had no reason to ignore it. Clang! The sword bestowed by the emperor was pulled out of the scabbard. Hu Zhongning jumped in a few big steps and stopped in front of the rushing Xisheng. Seeing that Yang Qindong was getting closer and closer, Xisheng's expression changed. Just as he was about to wave his saber, he recognized the person's identity with the help of the moonlight. He said, "So it is Lord Hu. I am Qin Hu Xisheng. Why are you stopping me?" Ah! This voice was so familiar. At such a close distance, Hu Zhongning recognized the person's identity and couldn't help but be startled. What was going on? Why was it Xisheng? Hu Zhongning, who couldn't react quickly in his mind, was stunned there. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Xisheng flashed past him and continued to chase Yang Qindong in front of him. Xisheng didn't have the intention to kill. He also knew that if he killed Yang Qindong here, the consequences wouldn't be something he could bear. Even if his older brother Xining helped, there would be no avoiding a lawsuit. Therefore, he only wanted to scare the other party. As long as the other party admitted defeat and admitted his mistake, it would be enough to restore his face and reap enough benefits. In Xisheng's eyes, it was not difficult to do this. With his skill, wasn't it easy to catch a scholar who was close to him? Although Xisheng was domineering, his martial arts were not bad. At least he looked agile. On the other hand, Yang Qindong, who was being chased, had a panicked expression. He kept shouting and yelling, as if he would catch up at any time. However, it was precisely because Yang Qindong looked like he could be caught up at any moment that Xisheng was unable to succeed. There were several times when he was about to slash at Yang Qindong with the back of his saber, but for some reason Yang Qindong managed to dodge. That person was still dodging randomly, as if the reason he could not hit him was that his luck was too good. Was Yang Qindong really that lucky? During this chase, he saw at least 7 or 8 openings that Xisheng revealed. If he wanted to, he could have beautifully seized the saber with his bare hands and killed the other party. However, he couldn't do this. The other party was the Qianhu of the embroidered uniform guard. No matter what the reason was, if he killed the other party in public, it would be a big mistake and he would be held accountable. He couldn't fight back. He could only escape and then find the best opportunity to dig a big hole for Xisheng. Qianhu Shi, what are you doing? Are you openly killing an imperial court official? Stop it right now. In a flash, Xisheng jumped over him and rushed to Yang Qindong. This made Hu Zhongning break out in cold sweat. He shouted and wanted to chase after him. However, at this time, Xisheng's subordinates arrived. They naturally didn't dare to do anything because of Hu Zhongning's identity, but they could still stop him. Hu Zhongning, who found that he was surrounded, was anxious. He knew that he was outnumbered and couldn't find any opportunity. He immediately shouted into the darkness, "Little bastards, why don't you come out?" As soon as he shouted, at least 50 embroidered uniform guard rushed out of the darkness. Among them was Lieutenant Sun Chuang, who had been beaten 10 times before. These people were the ones on duty today. They were responsible for the safety of Potato. They had been watching from afar since Yang Qindong and Hu Zhongning drank together. They didn't understand the reason, but they saw Xisheng kill with their own eyes. However, seeing that the people who came were also embroidered uniform guard, Sun Chuang and the others couldn't show up for a while. Who knew what had happened? They didn't want the divine armaments to fight and implicate them. But then Hu Zhongning's shout came. With the orders of the superior, these people couldn't hide anymore. They all showed up in the darkness and surrounded the group of people brought by Xisheng. A wise man wouldn't fight when the odds were against him. Seeing that there were more people than them, Xisheng's subordinates began to scatter and flee. Some of them took the opportunity to rush into the protected potato field. For a time, countless bean seedlings were trampled, making a mess. Because of the appearance of Hu Zhongning's subordinates, the place became completely chaotic. And in this chaos, Xisheng finally grabbed Yang Qindong's arm and raised the embroidered spring saber in his hand high. No! Hu Zhongning, who was a few meters away, saw this scene clearly with the help of the moonlight. He immediately shouted to stop it. Xisheng was taken aback by this shout. At this moment, Yang Qindong, who was caught, suddenly moved his arm. He didn't know where the strength came from, but it made his right hand numb. Then the saber fell down and landed on Yang Qindong's chest. Suddenly, A stream of bright red blood spurted out and sprayed on Shisheng's body, dyeing his flying fish robe red. Ah! At the same time, the green-clothed Yang Chendong fell to the ground in a timely manner. When Yang Chendong fell, the eyes of Hu Zhongning, who was chasing after Yang Chendong, had already turned red. He was unable to control his anger, and when he arrived behind Shisheng, he stabbed out with his sword. Feeling a gust of cold wind behind him, Shisheng habitually dodged to the side, but in the end, because of the potato vines under his feet, he was a beat too slow. It was because of this beat that his right leg was slashed by a long sword. The sharp sword immediately cut through a meridian, and Shisheng painfully fell to the ground with a plop. "Tie him up!" After stabbing Shisheng, Hu Zhongning shouted loudly. Then he stretched out his hand in front of Yang Chendong, who was lying on the ground. At this moment, an even faster figure suddenly appeared in front of Yang Chendong. He quickly carried him on his back and ran straight to the Yang family manor. Chapter 92. The person who came was Tiger's man. He had been secretly observing the situation. When he saw that the young master had been cut and was bleeding, he immediately became anxious. Without caring about anything else, he rushed out and carried Yang Chendong on his back. Then he recklessly ran into the manor. Beta Persei also appeared with him. He didn't snatch the job of carrying the young master, but he did stay where he was. He stared coldly at Hu Zhongning, a huge murderous aura leaping out of his body. It was clear that he was ready to kill if there was any disagreement. "Who are you?" An embroidered uniform guard didn't understand. Seeing that someone was blocking in front of Lord Hu, he wanted to step forward and question him. However, before he could move, he was stopped by Lieutenant Sun Chuang at the side. "Get back!" With an angry roar, he pushed the blind embroidered uniform guard behind him. Others might not know, but Sun Chuang, who had suffered in the Yang family's old manor in Jianing Manor, was very clear about Beta Persei's strength. Now that his master was injured, the consequences would be unimaginable if he was enraged. Hu Zhongning naturally recognized Beta Persei and knew how powerful this person was. He didn't act rashly, but still said out of concern, "I just want to see how Yang Shima's injuries are. There's no need for Lord Hu to worry. My master has the elixir in his hands." Beta Persei spoke as if he could hold back 10,000 men. Then he stared coldly at the crowd, all the muscles in his body ready to explode at any moment. Feeling the pressure of that aura, Hu Zhongning knew that he couldn't force his way in. He turned around and vented his anger on Shisheng. "Come, capture all these people who destroyed the auspicious land. Tomorrow morning, when the city gates open, we will enter the palace to see the emperor." With Hu Zhongning's order, the embroidered uniform guards who came with Shisheng were beaten to the ground one by one. Any slight resistance was met with a series of punches and kicks, making them cry for their parents. Yang Manor's inner courtyard. Tiger's man ran back with bloodstains on his back. As soon as he entered the side hall, he was seen by Chao Yin and the other girls. "Ah, young master." Chao Yin only managed to shout once before her vision blurred. Then her body fell to the ground. Fortunately, the maidservant Xiao Wei reacted very quickly and reached out to catch it to avoid the danger of touching the ground. "Dong Shui!" Madame Shui and Mu Lily also shouted in surprise. Then, their faces turned pale and they didn't know what to do. On the other hand, Yang Chendong, who was being carried on his back, was still very calm. He said to Tiger's mane in a weak voice, "Wake her up and let her apply medicine for me. No one else is allowed to enter my bedroom without my orders." "Yes." Tiger's mane replied with tears in his eyes. On the other side, Xiao Wei had already shaken Xiao Yin awake. After knowing the young master's intention, she ignored her weak legs and hurried to the bedroom. Yang Chendong, who entered the bedroom first, was placed on the bed by Tiger's man. After seeing that there was no one around, he let out a sigh of relief and said, "Hey, Tiger's man, can you run slower next time? Do you know that the young master was originally fine? But when you jolted me on your back, I almost suffered internal injuries." As he spoke, Yang Chendong threw a bag of chicken blood to the side and took off the bulletproof vest under his green robe. There was a cut on the bulletproof vest, but it was only a scratch. As for the underwear under the bulletproof vest, there was not a single scratch. Tiger's man's eyes widened. Young master, what about me? Your skills were all taught by the young master. Why don't you think that Shisheng with his mediocre skills can hurt me? Yang Chendong asked with an expression that said, "Why don't you use your brain?" After speaking, he did not wait to see if Tiger's man understood. He continued, "The young master's injuries will continue to be feigned. Before this matter is resolved, no one is allowed to enter the bedroom without permission. But if anyone comes, just tell them that the young master is sleeping. Chao Yin is the only one taking care of him." After speaking, Yang Chendong waved his hand. Tiger's man left the bedroom in a daze. At that moment, Chao Yin rushed over with tears in her eyes. Before she even entered the room and saw Yang Chendong, she began to cry loudly. "Young master." He reached out to touch his forehead. The young master is fine. Don't cry like that. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll scare him until he falls ill. Ah! Chao Yin covered her small mouth with her hand. At this moment, her face was like a pear blossom in the rain. She saw that Yang Chendong had already bared his upper body, revealing his well-built muscles. It was so perfect, and he didn't look the least bit injured. At that moment, she did not care about the difference between men and women. She sprinted forward and gently stroked his bare chest with her small hand. Then, with a look of surprise, she said, "Young master, are you the reincarnation of a god? Are you invulnerable?" He was clearly covered in blood just a moment ago. How could he be completely fine now? This was simply unbelievable. The young master is not the reincarnation of a god, nor is he invulnerable. It was just a show. Yang Chendong smiled as he picked up the half-filled bag of chicken blood on the ground. "Look, this is why you were bleeding just now." After Yang Chendong's detailed explanation, Chao Yin realized that the young master was indeed not injured. It was something called a bulletproof vest that protected him. Everything was just a show. After learning the truth, Chao Yin breathed a sigh of relief. Then, with a pleading tone, she said, "Young master, can you promise Chao Yin that you won't scare me again in the future? All right, don't do it again, don't do it again." Yang Chendong laughed heartily. Then he leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "But you still have to act. Yin also needs to cooperate with the young master, understand?" Chao Yin's ear was tickled by that breath. She was already blushing and could only nod vigorously. As for what the young master said and what he wanted her to do, she probably could not hear clearly for a while. Outside the bedroom, Madame Shui, Mu Lily, and little Wei were kneeling. Dong Shui was injured because of them. They were kneeling here to pray for Dong Shui and to get better soon. Otherwise, even if they died now, they would be too ashamed to face anyone. In the small courtyard outside the bedroom, Yang and Yang Si stood at the door. They were like two gatekeepers guarding the door, preventing anyone from coming in to peek. No matter how much Madame Shui begged, they could only shake their heads in disapproval. This time, the sixth young master was injured. As the family's guards, they were responsible. Now, they could not wait to receive the military order to kill Shisheng. At this time, they were still full of anger. How could they be nice to others? No matter how beautiful Madame Shui was at this time, in their eyes, she was nothing more than a pink skeleton. "How is Yang Shima?" Outside the small courtyard, Hu Zhongning rushed in with an anxious expression. Beside him was Lieutenant Sun Chuang. "Stop." Seeing the two people coming, Beta Percy I said unceremoniously. Hearing this, Hu Zhongning and Sun Chuang could not help but stand in place. This person had left a big shadow in their hearts. As soon as they saw this person, they could not help but feel weak in the knees. Looking at this person's ferocious face, no one dared to rush over. It was unknown when, but Tiger Ray had appeared, appearing directly opposite Hu Zhongning. "Lord Hu." After cupping his fists in greeting, Hu Mang said in a booming voice, "Young master is currently applying the medicine. Once the medicine takes effect, he will most likely fall asleep. Fortunately, the wound is not very deep. There should be no problem after a few days of recuperation. How is Shishang now? First, he politely told them that the young master was fine, but it was not appropriate for them to visit him. Then, he turned the blame to Shishang. It's good that Yang Xianma is fine. This is also my negligence. As for Shishang, he is currently imprisoned, and because the gates to the capital are closed, he cannot enter. Once the gates open at dawn, this lord will personally escort Shishang into the palace to meet his majesty. When the time comes, I will definitely give Yang Xianma an explanation. Hu Chongning said angrily. At this time, he hated Shishang to the core. Shishang took advantage of his brother's power and didn't put him, a superior, in his eyes. He even hurt his future son-in-law, Yang Qindong. Just now, he had seen dozens of people running around in the fields. Who knew how many potatoes they had destroyed in that short period of time? He had to give an explanation for all of this. Then he could only use Shishang. Although he did not want to offend the eunuchs, he did not want to take the blame for no reason. Shishang was destined to be unlucky this time. Everything would depend on how much help his brother, Xining, could give him. Shishang was going to be in trouble. Good. I hope Lord Hu can do as you say. As for here, I ask Lord Hu to go back first. My lord is asleep and will not see anyone. Tiger's man wanted Hu Zhongning to express his position. When he found out that the young master was only acting and wasn't really injured, the anger in his heart had lessened by a lot. If that wasn't the case, the brocade guards wouldn't have been able to stop them from snatching the victory, and the result would have been 1,000 cuts. Hu Zhongning wanted to ask if Yang Qindong's life was in danger. After all, from the scene at that time, he had lost a lot of blood. Now that he knew that Yang Xianma was fine, he was relieved. He knew that he had missed this opportunity and it was not appropriate to force his way in. Moreover, whether or not he could force his way in was another matter. He could only cup his fists and say, "Thank you for your hard work. This official will take his leave first. I will visit Yang Xianma in 2 days." Hu Zhongning left. When he left, his complexion was obviously much better. Yang Qindong's life was not in danger. This matter could be salvaged. At least his guilt was not so great. As for how this matter should be resolved, it needed to be decided by the emperor. It was not something that a fourth-rank official like him could decide. Chapter 93. Madame Snow and the other 2 girls were still kneeling on the ground. The 3 girls had been sobbing since Hu Zhongning came in and left, as if they were the biggest sinners who had hurt Yang Qindong. In the bedroom, Chao Yin had already helped Yang Qindong take a bath and lie on the bed. Only then did she remember that Madame Snow and the other 2 girls were still kneeling outside the yard. She asked carefully, "Young master, what should we do with them? It's late at night. They'll get sick if they keep kneeling like this. Ask them to leave. Forget it. Ask Madame Snow to come in and ask Mu Lily and Wire to leave." Yang Qindong thought for a while and shook his head. If he did not let them in, the 3 girls would not listen to him and leave. He didn't want to end up causing the 3 girls to fall sick while he was fine. Okay. Chao Yin answered obediently. At this moment, she was not jealous at all. The young master could not be her only young master. She had thought about this for a long time. With one more sister to take care of the young master, perhaps the young master would live a happier life. As long as the young master was happy, she would be happy too. Outside the bedroom, Madame Shui got the message and could enter the bedroom. Mu Lily and Wire both breathed a sigh of relief. They were worried that they couldn't do anything. Now that Madame Shui could go in and help, they could go back to rest. At least they didn't have to feel so guilty. Madame Snow followed Chao Yin into the bedroom with a worried look. She saw Yang Qindong lying on the bed. At that moment, she couldn't stop her tears from flowing out. With a plop, she knelt down and said, "Dong Shui, it's all our fault for implicating you. We've already made a decision. Tomorrow morning, we'll enter the city and ask for forgiveness from Shishang." Nonsense. Yang Qindong, who was going to rest, immediately opened his eyes. His expression suddenly became very serious. Remember, your lives belong to the young master. Without the order of the young master, no one can make decisions without my permission. As for Shishang, he can't even protect himself. He won't make trouble for you." Seeing Yang Qindong's serious look, Madame Snow trembled with fear. She knelt on the ground and did not dare to make a sound. Xiao Yin came forward, helped her up, and then whispered something in her ear. Madame Snow's face changed again and again. Finally, she looked at Yang Qindong with confusion. Her eyes were full of disbelief. Yang Qindong naturally knew what this gaze meant. At that moment, he did not hold back and directly lifted the blanket, revealing his strong and uninjured chest. He said, Look, Iner did not lie to you. I am indeed not injured." "Ah!" Madame Snow did the same thing as Xiao Yin. She covered her mouth with her hand. Her face was full of disbelief. After seeing so much blood in the side hall, she thought that Dong Shui was going to die. Who would have thought that he would be fine? How did he do that? "All of you, come over here. This young master will tell you slowly." Madame Snow's surprised face was so cute. Yang Qindong's heart skipped a beat. His body reacted unconsciously. He waved his hand and asked Xiao Yin and Madame Snow to come to his bedside. The two women did not suspect anything and hurriedly came to the side of the bed. Suddenly, a pair of big hands reached over and forcefully pulled the two women into the bed. Suddenly, a masculine man's breath rushed into the two women's nostrils. "Ah!" At this moment, they realized what was going on. They instinctively wanted to struggle, but when they remembered that the person hugging them was Yang Qindong, the two women suddenly blushed. They just lowered their heads and didn't resist at all. "Not bad. It's easier to talk like this. Haha." Yang Qindong laughed heartily. Although he was not ready to do anything, especially with two women at the same time, it was a very happy thing to have beautiful women in his arms. The two women were very cooperative. They leaned on Yang Qindong's broad shoulders. Their faces were full of shyness and happiness. "Come on, sing a song for the young master. Put me to sleep." Feeling that his body was about to react unnaturally, Yang Qindong suppressed his thoughts and said to Madame Snow, "Okay." Madame Snow was very obedient. She immediately sang the song that she had just learned, by Suzhen at the foot of Mount Qingqing. "Don't sing a new song. Sing an old song for the young master." Yang Qindong was used to listening to the songs of the later generations. He did not know much about the songs of the present, so he wanted to take this opportunity to learn more about them. The next moment, Madame Shui began to play an old tune. The lingering melody was like a lullaby. Before long, Yang Qindong began to snore. He was really tired. There were too many things he had to do and think about in the past few days. He had to bear all the pressure by himself. Yang Qindong had actually fallen asleep, causing Xiao Yin and Madame Snow to involuntarily smile. Next, the two women made the same shameful action, which was to take off their coats, leaving only their undergarments. They leaned against Yang Qindong and snuggled up to each other. Not long after, they fell asleep. The guards outside the bedroom, Beta Persei and Yang Si, had been replaced by Yang Wu and Yang Lu. In the dark, Dao Xiao and a team of 10 guards were secretly watching everything to prevent anyone from getting close to the small courtyard. If anyone dared to do so, Zhou Wu, with a silencer and a weapon, would show him the fragility of life. The sky slowly brightened. Hu Zhongning, who could not wait any longer, led a team of 100 brocade guards to escort Shishang and more than 20 men to the capital. As soon as the city gate opened, they entered the city and went straight to the inner city. In the imperial palace, there was no news from the court. The civil and military officials were still gathered in the court as usual, kneeling to the emperor and discussing the affairs of the world. Emperor Zhu Qizhen, who did not seem to have enough sleep, yawned from time to time, and then listlessly listened to the officials' reports. The emperor was diligent in his work. Since ancient times, this had become a custom. Almost all the leaders had to do this. Otherwise, they would not be able to hold power. As such, very few emperors would sleep in. In comparison, Yang Qindong was much more fortunate. At this moment, he was slowly waking up. According to his usual routine, it should be time for him to get up and go for a morning run. However, instead of a morning run, he was greeted with an erection. This was something that all men in their prime would encounter. His body was the first to react. Yang Chendong, who was hugging two women, wanted to get up, but it was very inappropriate. Was he supposed to set up a tent in front of the two women? How embarrassing would that be? In addition, he had to tell others that he was injured. If he could get up and continue to run, it would be inexcusable. Let's go back to sleep. Yang Chendong tried to convince himself. He ignored the warning of his biological clock and wanted to continue sleeping. But at this moment, Xiao Yin's body moved slightly on his left, and her breathing seemed to become heavier. For a long time, Xiao Yin had a very regular pattern of waking up and sleeping. For example, at this time, she would usually get up to prepare to serve the young master. Although she didn't need to make breakfast, she came to the young master's room to tidy it up and fold the blankets. So, the moment Yang Chendong woke up, she also woke up. Her hand inadvertently swept over Yang Chendong's body and touched that towering pillar. In that instant, Xiao Yin completely woke up. Her face flushed red as she recalled where she was staying at this moment. She thought about how the young master was lying next to her and seemed to have a reaction. What should she do? Should she ignore it and continue to pretend to sleep, or should she help the young master? She had heard the old women in the manor say that once a man had that intention, it would be very uncomfortable if it wasn't resolved. Xiao Yin definitely didn't want Yang Chendong to feel uncomfortable. So what should she do? What should she do? Her heart thumped wildly. In just a few breaths, Xiao Yin made a decision. She took a deep breath and mustered up her courage. Her small hand groped toward Yang Chendong's crotch. Knowing that Xiao Yin had woken up, Yang Chendong felt very awkward. Just as he was thinking about how to return to normal, a small hand suddenly touched him. In that instant, his body couldn't help but tremble. The feeling made him feel very comfortable, but also very nervous. It was really indescribable with words. "Young master, let serve you." Suddenly, he heard the soft sound of drizzling rain. Before he could react, Xiao Yin had already dove into the blankets and swam towards that place. "No!" Yang Chendong instinctively wanted to stop her. It was this shout that woke Madame Shui on the other side. Due to the nature of Madame Shui's work, she didn't wake up very regularly. In addition, Yang Chendong lying next to her gave her a great sense of security, so she fell into a deep sleep. If it wasn't for Xiao Yin's shout, she probably wouldn't have woken up. After waking up, Madame Shui forgot that she was only wearing a doo-doo. On the contrary, she only remembered that the young master seemed to be injured. "Is he feeling unwell?" she asked anxiously. When Yang Chendong saw that Madame Snow had woken up, he felt a little awkward. Just as he was about to say something, Xiao Yin moved. In that instant, he felt a warm sensation spread throughout his body. He couldn't help but shiver slightly. Along with the shiver, he let out an "oh" sound from his mouth. "I'm so scared of crabs. I'll omit 100,000 words here." Chapter 94. While Yang Chendong was still blissfully confused, the court, which was originally calm, was in an uproar because of Hu Zhongning's sudden arrival. "Your Majesty, this is the entire story of what happened last night." Hu Zhongning knelt on the ground and explained in detail what he saw and heard. Then, he lowered his head deeply, as if he was waiting for the emperor's judgment. After Hu Zhongning told the story of what happened in Yangjia village, the court officials suddenly exploded. Without the emperor's order and without the slightest evidence, a Qianhu of the embroidered uniform guard dared to kill a fifth-rank official who had just made a great contribution. This was simply lawlessness. Not to mention, according to Hu Zhongning's explanation, a lot of potatoes were also wasted because of this. Overnight, Lord Hu brought people to dig up the trampled land and found that the potatoes in the field were greatly damaged. Many of them were already deformed. Of course, they didn't know that all of this was arranged by Yang Chendong in advance. Those potatoes were also cleaned up in advance. They didn't know that all of this was done by Yang Chendong, but they knew that the loss of potatoes was a loss to the court, the country, the emperor, and the court officials. Immediately, as the Minister of Revenue, Wuxia was the first to jump out. Originally, he was worried that there weren't enough potatoes. Because of this, he wanted to discuss with Yang Qindong and ask him to contribute more potatoes from his private fields. But now, not only did the country's potatoes suffer from the loss of production, Yang Qindong was also injured. If he couldn't punish Xisheng now, how could he negotiate with him? If he didn't punish the murderer, how could Yang Qindong be satisfied? If it were him, how could he be satisfied? Your Majesty. With a plop, he knelt on the ground. Xisheng has no respect for your Majesty, no respect for the law of the country, and did things based on his mood. He actually wanted to kill a court official. If this matter isn't severely punished, I'm afraid that the hearts of all the court officials will be cold. With Wuxia taking the lead, the Minister of Rights, Hu Ming, also knelt on the ground. For the sake of his son's future, he had to ruthlessly deal with Xisheng this time. Otherwise, if he had already offended Xisheng's son, wouldn't he be punished afterwards? Your Majesty. This subject agrees with Lord Wang's request to severely punish the murderer Xisheng. This subject agrees. Duke Ying, the representative of the military, Zhang Fu, who had always been a wooden block in the imperial court, was also kneeling on the ground, his face full of resentment. Last year, his family's fertile land had been seized by the two brothers, Xi Ning and Xisheng, causing his reputation to hit rock bottom. After that, he had been depressed and was prepared to spend the rest of his life as a loser. And now, the opportunity to counterattack had come. The two civil officials had taken the initiative to jump out. How could he be polite? He immediately expressed his thoughts. After the three of them, the other officials and generals also got down on their knees one by one, all of them wearing indignant expressions as they cursed the lawless and overjoyed man. Ying Zong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, had an ugly expression on his face. He had long regarded the potato as a great auspicious item and announced it to the world. It was equivalent to an imperial item. But Xisheng actually dared to bring people to attack and trample on the auspicious item. This was simply ignoring the existence of imperial power. Even if you have enmity with Yang Qindong and want to deal with him, you can find a safe place to do it. Why do you have to do it on the auspicious items crops? Isn't this the same as the god of longevity hanging himself? Are you tired of living? At this moment, Ying Zong really wanted to order Xisheng to be killed as a warning to others. But at this time, Wang Zhen, who was standing on the side, opened his mouth. Your Majesty, this matter is really strange. Why did Lord Shi kill Yang Shima? Why did he choose to do it on the auspicious items crops? All of this needs to be investigated. In this old servant's humble opinion, we should first clarify the whole story before making a decision. Originally, Wang Zhen was very angry after hearing Hu Zhongning's words. He also wanted to kill Hu Zhongning to relieve the hatred in his heart. After all, he and Yang Qindong already had a common interest. Just yesterday, Mao Mu, the court eunuch of the ceremony directorate, gave him a good item called diapers. With it, he really didn't need to worry about embarrassing himself on the spot because of his body. Wang Zhen also knew that these things came from Yang Qindong's hands and were brought to the palace by Mao Mu to sell. The main consumer group was the court eunuchs. Moreover, a single diaper was not cheap and actually cost 2 taels of silver. Fortunately, he could get 10% of the benefits from these 2 taels of silver. Many little drops make an ocean. Naturally, it was a profitable way to make money. With a common interest, Xisheng still wanted to harm Yang Qindong and even wanted to kill him. This was an unforgivable matter. But no matter what, this person was Xi Ning's younger brother and his only brother. Just based on this point, he had to stand up and speak up. The reason why Wang Zhen could have such power, other than Zhu Qizhen's great trust in him, was that he had the support of most of the court eunuchs. It was precisely because he had such confidence that he could be so unscrupulous and smooth when doing things. Xi Ning was one of the more powerful ones among those who supported him. If he couldn't speak up for Xisheng in this matter, then he would naturally offend him and his leadership position would be shaken. This wasn't something he wanted to see. This was why he hesitated and spoke up to help, wanting to entrust this matter to Zhu Qizhen. Originally, he already had a decision in his heart, but after hearing Wang Zhen's words, Ingzong immediately gave up his original idea and nodded in agreement. That's right, teacher's words are very reasonable. We have to investigate this matter thoroughly first. How about this? Teacher will handle this matter. Once there is a result, we can just let us and the officials know. Thank you, Your Majesty. Wang Zhen quickly knelt on the ground. Your Majesty is wise. All right, if there's nothing else, you can leave the court. Ingzong waved his hand. He was in a bad mood this morning, so he didn't have the heart to govern. He raised it up high and gently put it down. The matter actually ended like this. After the emperor left, Wang Zhen gave an order. Send Xishang to the imperial prison. At the same time, send Ji Ning to Yangjia Manor to investigate this matter. Since the power was in his hands, the person he sent must be a trusted aide. Ji Ning, this trusted aide, was put to good use. The officials who were still kneeling on the ground were all furious when they heard this answer, but there was nothing they could do. This matter had already been handed over to the East Ministry to handle. The result would most likely be reduced to a small matter and a small matter to nothing. As for the victim, Yang Qindong, he was after all still too young. Xishang alone was enough to injure him. Once the East Ministry stepped in, how could he withstand the pressure? At least, the officials didn't have any hope. Yangjia Manor. Early in the morning, the sixth young master had a pleasant and happy morning. Although it was the first time Qiao Yin had done such a thing, she still satisfied him with her cherry lips, allowing him to completely vent the depression he had been feeling for many days. Madame Snow finally understood what had happened. She immediately blushed and felt ashamed. Fortunately, Yang Qindong pretended to be asleep, which saved everyone from embarrassment. However, the three of them knew that after this morning's incident, their relationship had changed subtly. Even Wan Shi was afraid to take the first step. Once he took the first step, many things would follow naturally. Qiao Yin and Madame Snow even began to discuss who would serve him at night. Breakfast was served by the two women and delivered to Yang Qindong's mouth. He couldn't help but enjoy the bliss of having two women. This time, not only was his stomach full, but his big hands were also moving up and down. He was addicted to touching the two women and gained a lot of benefits. Naturally, the two women wanted to reject but still welcomed him, causing the bedroom to be filled with the sound of panting. All the happiness slowly dissipated after the appearance of Tiger's Mane. Young Master, Ji Ning from the Eastern Palace is here. He brought many tonics, saying that they are for young master to nourish your body. Eunuch Mao Mu is also here. He is waiting in the side hall. Yang Qindong's reaction was extremely fast. Seeing that the people from the Eastern Palace had condescended to give him gifts, and Wang Zhen had not only sent his confidant Ji Ning but also Mao Mu, it was obvious that he wanted to make peace. In that case, Xishang should be fine now. Thinking of this, Yang Qindong couldn't help but sigh softly. Originally, he thought that since he had given the potatoes to the emperor and many benefits to Wang Zhen, he should be considered an important person in the other party's heart. Today he had been wronged, so they should stand up for him. But now it seemed that he had been too optimistic. He was just 1,000 commander of the embroidered uniform guard, Xishang. Because he had a powerful elder brother, Xi Ning, everything that he had given up had become a thing of the past. In the end, he still had to become the sacrifice, the one who had to give in. After treating me like this, if this young master doesn't replace me, what else can I do? The incident had caused Yang Qindong to understand the truth. With such an emperor and a eunuch who couldn't differentiate right from wrong, there was no hope for him. If he allowed this to continue, there would be a day when he would become a sacrifice. At that time, it would be too late for him to regret it. After firming up his inner beliefs, Yang Qindong suppressed the idea of starting a riot now. The target in his heart was too big, and the number of Han people he needed was unimaginable. If he were to start a war now, although he was confident that he wouldn't be defeated, the ones who would be harmed in the end would still be the Han people and the common people. This was not something he wanted to see. For the sake of this goal, he could only endure for now. Tiger's Mane, I won't be seeing Ji Ning. Call Mao Mu over. Chapter 95. Since he was prepared to back down, Yang Chendong had to put on a show of respect. What was the point of meeting Ji Ning? To make him lower his head in front of him? The sixth young master would never do such a thankless task. In the side hall, Ji Ning sat on the left while Mao Mu sat on the right. Both of them were looking straight ahead. Gentlemen, the sixth young master has a message for eunuch Mao. Please enter his bedroom. Lord Ji, if you have something to do, you can go ahead. Tiger's Mane entered the hall and clasped his hands. Ji Ning stood up with a satisfied look on his face, as though he had expected this to happen. Good. Then I'll take my leave first. Please send my regards to the sixth young master. Ji Ning's task was to mediate between the two of them. In order to achieve his goal, he had to lower his head when necessary. Fortunately, Yang Chendong was tactful. If he didn't want to see Ji Ning, he wouldn't have to see Ji Ning lowering his head. Ji Ning had to accept this favor. Good. Lord Ji, I'll definitely pass on your message to my young master. Tiger's Mane understood Yang Chendong's intentions and was naturally very polite to Ji Ning. Ha ha ha. Ji Ning laughed loudly and turned to leave, his face full of self-satisfaction. Mao Mu was left behind. He asked Tiger's Mane anxiously, "Did something happen to the sixth young master? Please follow me, eunuch Mao. You'll know when you see him." Tiger's Mane knew that Mao Mu had already sided with his young master. But even so, unless the young master ordered him to do so, he wouldn't say a word. The bedroom was still filled with fragrance. Naturally, it was the fragrance left behind by Chow Yin and Madame Snow. As soon as Mao Mu entered the bedroom, he immediately sensed the scent. He couldn't help but be delighted. This at least proved that the sixth young master's injuries weren't serious. Now he could be at ease. He had just expressed his loyalty yesterday. If something happened to the sixth young master today, he really didn't know what to do. "You're here. Take a seat." Yang Chendong leaned against the headboard and looked at eunuch Mao Mu with a normal expression. "Sixth young master, are you all right? After this old servant found out about it, I was so anxious that I couldn't even eat. All right? Tell me what eunuch Wang thinks." When Yang Chendong saw that Mao Mu was about to use his flattery, he had no choice but to interrupt him and get straight to the point. Knowing that the sixth young master didn't like flattery, Mao Mu tactfully stopped and got down to business. Eunuch Wang said that he hopes that the sixth young master will be magnanimous and spare Xixing for the sake of him and eunuch Xining. As for the conditions, he allows this old servant to be promoted to eunuch penning of the ceremony directorate. Although I'm ranked last, it's still a big step up. At the same time, he promises that Xixing won't cause trouble for the sixth young master. Also, when you do things in the capital in the future, the Eastern Faction Guards and the Brocade Guards will give you face and won't cause trouble for you. After saying these words, Mao Mu lowered his head a lot. He received the most from this so-called exchange, so he didn't have to say anything more. Mao Mu's promotion from attendant to penning of the ceremony directorate was a step that many people wouldn't be able to achieve in their lifetime without enough merit or ability. This was equivalent to a small eunuch becoming the head of eunuchs, and these were the conditions that Wang Zhen had to pay. As for the Eastern Faction Guards and the Brocade Guards not causing trouble for him, it was better to say that they were giving him face than saying that they were threatening him. The meaning was very obvious. If Yang Chendong didn't agree and insisted on killing Xixing, then these two departments would keep an eye on the Yang family manor. If there was even the slightest movement, the Yang family would be in big trouble. Humph! After understanding the crux of the matter, Yang Chendong's expression turned cold. This Wang Zhen was really an ingrate that couldn't be fed. Fortunately, he had less than a year to live. Otherwise, with the sixth young master's temperament, he would probably send Tiger's Mane and the others to take his life tonight. Don't bother with a person who's about to die. Let people off when possible. Take a step back and you'll see the world. All kinds of advice from saints flowed into Yang Chendong's mind, making him finally make up his mind to take a step back. As for what would happen next, he would urge Gao Xiong and the others to take action on Ryukyu Island. He had to quickly seize more territory. Only when he was strong would others not dare to bully him and ignore him. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. When he finally returned to reality, Yang Chundong smiled and patted Mao Mu on the shoulder. Good. This young master used a knife wound in exchange for your promotion. No matter how I look at it, it's a good deal. How about this? When you go back, tell eunuch Wang that this matter is over. Sixth young master. At this moment, Mao Mu was so touched that his nose turned sour. He thought that, in the face of a powerful group of eunuchs, Yang Chindong would give in, but he didn't expect him to be so straightforward. If that was the case, it seemed that the biggest beneficiary was himself. He'd only been with him for 2 days, and he'd been promoted twice. The path he'd chosen was indeed correct. Okay. I don't like to express my position through words. I'd rather see everything put into action. How is it? How are diapers selling in the palace? Yang Chindong didn't bring up the previous matter and spoke in a casual manner. Selling very well. After all, it's like these things are tailor-made for us eunuchs. Now, all the eunuchs with some status come to me to get the goods. Because of this, some people have bad ideas. But this time, I've been promoted twice and I have eunuch Wang behind me. Others don't dare to do anything to me. When talking about the situation in the palace, Mao Mu's tone became much more excited. He thought of yesterday afternoon, when several eunuchs who used to ignore him took the initiative to greet him and called him Eunuch Mao. He felt a burst of elation. Good, very good. Continue doing what you're doing. For those eunuchs who have requests but don't have money, you can have them use other things in exchange. For example, some information they've heard. Then, sort out what you think is useful and send it to this young master. Do you understand? Yang Chindong said encouragingly. Mao Mu was a chess piece he'd buried in the palace, and on the surface. At the very least, Wang Jin knew that the two of them had a deep relationship. But this was just a smokescreen. In reality, he wanted information from the palace, and he wanted to use Mao Mu as the center to quickly develop his own power. In the eyes of the sixth young master, the intelligence war wasn't just about information from the capital. He had to know all the information from the officials and the palace. Only then could he make the most accurate decisions. This servant understands. Mao Mu patted his chest and promised, and then he added, I also know a few things about Brother Shi Ning's illegal activities. As long as the sixth young master needs it, I can send someone to sort it out at any time. There's no need. Remember, you're only looking for information. Before you've stabilized your position, don't think about dealing with anyone. On the contrary, you have to maintain good relations with everyone. Do you understand? Yang Chindong shook his head. Shi Ning's fate had already been explained in history. As long as nothing unexpected happened, someone else would deal with him. There was no need for him to do anything. Although Mao Mu didn't understand why Yang Chindong had such a good temper. Since his master had said this, as a servant, he had to obey, so he immediately agreed. Just as the officials had expected, after Wang Zhen took over the Yang clan, he quickly sent someone to reach an agreement with Yang Chindong. No one knew what sort of promise had been made, but in any case, Yang Chindong, the victim, was no longer pursuing the matter. As a result, some of the officials who wanted to take advantage of the situation had no chance. In the palace, Wang Zhen did not go back on his word and promoted Mao Mu to head eunuch of the ceremony directorate. Henceforth, this person would be one of the leading eunuchs in the organization. The gloomy Shi Ning walked into Wang Zhen's room. Once there was no one else present, he immediately got down on his knees. My thanks to eunuch Wang for saving my brother. If you have any orders, Shi Ning will do his best to repay them. Ha ha! Eunuch Shi, what are you doing? Get up, get up. Wang Zhen helped Shi Ning up from the ground with a smile. We all serve His Majesty, so isn't it only right for us to help each other? As for that Yang Shima, he magnanimously let this matter pass. You two brothers should know how to be grateful. At least for the time being, don't think about provoking him. Understand? Since he had promised not to harass Yang Chindong, Wang Zhen had to do it. At least for the time being, he still had to do it. This was also related to his own interests. Yes. Since eunuch Wang has spoken, I will naturally obey. Then, do you need this eunuch to personally go to the Yang clan and meet the multi-talented Dong Shuai? Even though Shi Ning was smiling, His face still gave people a gloomy feeling. Perhaps only when he was on duty in front of His Majesty would his smile become truly brilliant. That's not necessary. This eunuch asked Ji Ning to go there before, which is already giving him enough face. There's no need for eunuch Shi to make a trip for such a small matter. Wang Zhen shook his head. Regarding Yang Chendong, his feelings were somewhat complicated. No matter what, this person was the descendant of the three Yang Chendong. Logically speaking, this person should be his enemy. But for the sake of benefits, they were bound together. Within a limited range, he would help as much as he could. But once things got troublesome, he would decisively give up on Yang Chendong. Of course, he didn't need such a chess piece in his eyes. He also didn't want more people to come into contact with him. It was enough to have Mao Mu as a bridge. As for Shi Ning, this person was extremely smart. If he was able to establish a connection with Wang Zhen, who knew how much benefits he would get. Shi Ning said this just to express his attitude. He didn't want to make things too difficult for Wang Zhen. Since he didn't need to make an appearance, who would be willing to make an apology? He immediately promised that he wouldn't find Yang Chendong to express his gratitude, nor would he cause trouble for him. In the future, everyone would mind their own business. Then, he asked about his younger brother Shisheng. This was the main reason why he came. He asked when his younger brother would be released. Chapter 96. After a while, the imperial prison is our territory anyway. Your brother won't suffer there. If you want, you can go see him at any time. As for releasing him, I'll see when the emperor is in a good mood. I'll plead for mercy for you. Wang Zhen thought about it, but he still didn't want to release Shisheng. Firstly, he wanted to give the officials an explanation. He couldn't just release Shisheng right after he started yelling about fighting and killing. That would be too obvious of favoritism. Secondly, he wanted to give the other eunuchs a warning. If they dared to make a move without permission, they had to be prepared to go to the imperial prison. All right, we'll listen to eunuch Wang. Shi Ning also knew that it would be inappropriate to release Shisheng now. He thought about how the officials were living a life worse than death in the imperial prison. However, his younger brother was there, which was equivalent to recuperating. There was nothing to worry about. Things seemed to have calmed down. However, through this incident, Yang Chendong saw some people's hearts. For example, his brother's behavior disappointed the sixth young master. Eldest brother, second brother, and third brother didn't come. Only fourth brother and fifth brother came to see him. Fifth brother came alone. After seeing that Yang Chendong was fine, he left with peace of mind. Not only did fourth brother come, but he also brought Duke of Wei Suqin's eldest son, Su Changzong. Yang Chendong naturally knew why his three brothers didn't come. First, it was because Yang Chendong had offended Shisheng and Shi Ning. They were afraid of being implicated, so they didn't dare to come. Fifth brother was more honest and didn't think too much. As for fourth brother, he obviously came for something. In the side hall, Yang Chendong walked out with Chao Yin and Lady Snow on his left and right. Immediately, Yang Yang and young master Su Changzong looked at him enviously, as if he was a pig. Thank you for your trouble, fourth brother and young master Su. Yang Chendong sat down and cupped his hands, looking as if he still couldn't walk properly. When it came to serious matters, Yang Yang seemed to be a lot more agitated. Sixth brother, you've suffered a lot this time. That Shisheng is really too much of a bully. Do you want me to find a few people to secretly beat him up? Oh, fourth brother has this kind of ability? Yang Chendong knew that Yang Chendong was putting on an act in front of him, but he still pretended to be surprised, as if he would agree at any time. Seeing that Yang Chendong was about to get serious, Yang Chendong's complexion immediately changed. He changed his tone and said, "Revenge is a dish best served cold. Let's wait for a while. When the limelight is over, it won't be too late to deal with him." Yang Chendong smiled and shook his head. His fourth brother was already in his 30s, but sometimes he behaved like a child. Yang Chendong naturally wouldn't mind. Instead, he looked at Su Changzong and cupped his fists. "Brother Su, I'm really sorry to trouble you to come here. Sixth young master, please don't say that. In fact, this young master has come here to ask for a favor. Su Chengzong's expression was somewhat conflicted, as if he had something to ask but didn't know how to say it. Oh, Brother Su, feel free to speak your mind. There are no outsiders here. Yang Qindong didn't even look at Xiao Yin and Madame Shui. They were going to be his women, so of course they weren't outsiders. Xiao Yin and Madame Snow were very excited by Yang Qindong's actions. Their gazes on Yang Qindong became much gentler. Originally, Su Chengzong couldn't say some things in front of the two women. However, since Yang Qindong said so, unless he gave up on his purpose, he had to say it. Well, since the sixth young master doesn't treat me as an outsider, then I'll say it. Actually, in addition to visiting the sixth young master, I have another thing that Madame Xiang of the Nine Arts Workshop asked me to do. As he spoke, he paid attention to Yang Qindong's reaction. He didn't seem surprised or surprised at all. However, Madame Shui, who was standing next to him, seemed a little unnatural. Seeing that Yang Qindong didn't ask or interrupt him, Su Chengzong simply gritted his teeth and told him about Madame Shui's request. Seeing that the 100 Flowers Hall is about to close, Madame Xiang wants to learn some songs from the sixth young master so that more people can hear the sounds of nature. Yes, we've been listening to new songs recently. If we don't hear it, we'll feel uncomfortable. Young Master Su's idea is also our idea. Yang saw Su Chengzong give him a look and immediately spoke up to help him. One was the eldest son of Duke Wei, and the other was Yang Qindong's fourth brother. It was obvious that Madame Xiang had put in a lot of effort and was determined to get these two people to intercede. Unfortunately, Madame Xiang didn't know Yang Qindong, nor did she know his ambition. If Madame Xiang was just an ordinary entertainer, perhaps Yang Qindong would have helped her. He would have taught her 2 or 3 songs casually, which would have saved everyone's face. But who was Madame Xiang? She was a talent. Since she was a talent and Yang Qindong had met her, there was no reason for him to let her go. Madame Shui was already in his hands and on his bed. Where was Madame Xiang? Su Chengzong and Yang Qindong, who had been waiting for a reply, felt their hearts skip a beat. They thought that they would definitely get what they wanted, but something went wrong. Was Yang Qindong really not willing to give them face? I'm sorry, Brother Su, fourth brother. It's not that I don't want to give you face, but I think too highly of Madame Xiang. I think she just wants to be an entertainer and stay in the small Nine Arts Workshop. She won't be able to achieve anything in her life. It's better for her to come here. I have a big platform here, and I'm sure she'll have room to express herself. Then, she can learn more new songs. Yang Qindong's words were very clear. It was not that he didn't want to give them face, but he wanted to take Madame Xiang in. Since he wanted to keep her for his own use, why would he teach her a new song and let her have more strength to stand on her own? Hearing such a reason and answer, the two people didn't know what to say for a while. If it had been any other way to refuse, the two of them would have been angry. However, Yang Qindong had said that everything was for his own benefit, and that he wanted to take Madame Xiang in. What else could they say? Criticize him for being overbearing? No matter what era it was, there was one principle that didn't change. Those who were capable would rise, and those who were mediocre would fall. In terms of new songs, Yang Qindong's performance was definitely the best. He naturally had a certain amount of authority in this area, so it was hard for others to refute his words. That sixth young master, what do you mean by a big platform? Even though Su Chengzong understood what he meant, he still didn't want to give up. The immortal abode. The immortal abode that even His Majesty knows of is huge and has a good environment. It's not something a small Nine Arts Workshop can compare to. When the time comes, the number of customers there will be many times greater than the current Nine Arts Workshop. Singing new songs there will be more influence and naturally you'll be able to earn even more money. Yang Qindong's answer could be said to be powerful and resonant, thus making Su Chengzong and Yang shut their mouths. The immortal abode was still under renovation, and in order to maintain a sense of mystery, it didn't allow outsiders to casually investigate. However, its reputation had long since spread far and wide. Apart from the fact that His Majesty knew of it and had promised to personally attend the opening ceremony, there was another important reason for its influence. It was said that a total of 300,000 taels of silver had been invested. 300,000 taels. One tael of silver could be exchanged for 1,000 copper coins, and one copper coin could buy 2 small steamed buns. If that was the case, one tael of silver was equivalent to 1,000 yuan in the modern era. 300,000 taels of silver was equivalent to 300 million yuan in the modern era. It was just a restaurant, yet such a huge investment had been made. It was no wonder that everyone was so curious about it. As a result, the restaurant industry in the capital had already been dealt a heavy blow before it even opened. Some restaurant owners were already considering selling their businesses. They were worried that once the immortal abode opened, everyone would go there to spend money. What would they do then? A restaurant that hadn't even opened yet was already enough to make everyone in the same industry feel insecure, to say nothing of the common folk. They were all waiting with bated breath, wondering what the immortal abode would be like after investing so much money in it. Would it really become the abode of a deity? Yang Chendong was using the immortal abode as a platform, so a small 9-arts workshop naturally couldn't compare to it. Su Chengzong, who was still a little unconvinced, couldn't say anything more. After a while, the two of them dejectedly left. Yang Chendong and the other two remained in the side hall. "Young master, have you really taken a liking to Lady Xiang?" Out of curiosity or jealousy, Madame Shui asked the question out of jealousy. "Haha, her dancing isn't bad." Yang Chendong didn't answer the question. Then, when he saw that Madame Snow and Xiao Yin didn't seem to care, he put on a straight face and said, "Let me tell you, I have a lot of property, and there are many opportunities for you to show off. Let alone the 3 of you, even if a dozen talents like you came, the young master would still be able to handle them all. So, don't even think about fighting amongst yourselves. If Lady Xiang doesn't come, then it's fine. But if she does, then we'll be good sisters. If I find out who played a role in this, I won't punish her. I'll just let her leave the Yang clan." Yang Chendong said these words very seriously and solemnly. It seemed that he rarely saw Yang Chendong like this. For a moment, Xiao Yin and Lady Shui's faces changed. Because they once had him, they were even more afraid of losing him now. They immediately knelt on the ground. "Young master, we're just asking. We don't have that kind of thought. Come on, get up." When the 2 women knelt, Yang Chendong's heart ached. He quickly reached out to help them up and held them in his arms. "I'll set a rule. Don't kneel so often in the future. What if you hurt your knees? The young master will feel sorry for you. Well, now let this young master see if you're really hurt. Let's go to the bedroom." Since the scene in the morning, the relationship between Yang Chendong and the 2 women had undergone a qualitative change. Although the last step hadn't been taken yet, it was only a matter of time. Yang Chendong, who already knew what was going on, decided to do both of them today. Now was the best time. How could the 2 women not know what the young master was going to do? For a moment, their faces flushed red. But how could they be a match for Yang Chendong, who was so powerful? Moreover, they had been looking forward to it. Now that they were finally going to get what they wanted, they were overjoyed. How could they back down? Not long after, the 3 of them entered the bedroom, and the sounds of spring filled the air, 100,000 words omitted here. Chapter 97. Zhouart's Workshop. After Su Chengzong and Yang Yang left the Yang family manor, they came to this place and saw Cui Nar and Dong Hanxiang, who were waiting for news. In Lady Xiang's boudoir, the 2 of them told the story of Yang Chendong's request. Originally, it was a man's pride to be able to come to Miss Xiang's room. But today they felt as if their butts were on fire. They left after telling her everything. They didn't want to stay a moment longer. Cui Nar, Miss Xiang, and her maid, Chun Tao, were left looking at each other. Cui Nar couldn't help but say, "Men are all bad. Dong Shui has already taken Miss Shui. Does he want to take our Xianger? Who does he think he is?" It was no wonder that Cui Nar was so angry. Miss Xiang was her money tree. Although Zhouart's workshop was not under her name, she was just a manager. In the words of the later generations, she was a senior manager. But here, her words carried a lot of weight. Once Miss Xiang left, the business of Joart's workshop would be greatly affected. At that time, her income would be reduced by more than half. How could she live then? Cui Nar's tone was resolute. Miss Xiang heard it, but she acted as if she didn't hear it. Instead, she said something that surprised everyone. Sister, you can follow Dong Shuai like Mu Lily. When the time comes, as long as I make this request, I'm sure he will agree. What? Cui Nar was shocked. She stared at Miss Shui as if she didn't know her. You really want to go to Dong Shuai? He is indeed talented, but he already has a powerful person like Miss Shui. If you go there, what status will you have? Will you be a concubine? Sister, I don't understand what you're saying. With our background, who can we be the first wife if we were to be with him? If we're lucky, we'll be pampered for a few more years. If we're unlucky, we'll be treated like a maid in the end. Even if Madame Shui is one step ahead of us, so what? She can't become a wife either. Even if she can become a concubine, it depends on Dong Shuai's mood. As she spoke, Lady Xiang shook her head with a sad expression. This was the tragedy of the hierarchy. As a concubine, she seemed to be glorious in front of others, but in reality, she was just a lowly person. She was even worse than an ordinary person. With this kind of status, which good family would want them? Even if she did meet one and married him as she aged, the number of people who had a good ending could be counted on one's fingers. Cui Nar was speechless for a while after being exposed by Madame Xiang. She sat there for a long time without saying anything. Sister, just promise Xiang that you'll go to the East Marshal's place with her. Otherwise, if something like what happened in 100 Flowers Hall happened in our 9 Arts workshop, do you think someone as daring as Dong Shuai would appear? For the sake of performing artists like us, you're willing to offend the nobles and even take a stab. Forget it, that kind of person will never appear in the future. Madame Xiang shook her head as she spoke. This time, she was able to make the decision to side with Yang Chendong so quickly because of the 100 Flowers Hall incident. Perhaps this Dong Shuai really was someone who had tender feelings for the fairer sex. After Madame Xiang made her decision, she began to convince Cui Nar. In the end, she was actually convinced. She agreed to let Madame Xiang find Yang Chendong and serve him. In exchange, she had to hand over Cui Nar and the servant girl Chun Tao's indenture contracts. After making her decision, Madame Xiang left the 9 Arts workshop. She brought the servant girl Chun Tao with her and headed straight for the Yang Manor 15 li south of the city. Inside the Yang Manor, Yang Chendong had already walked out of his bedroom, leaving behind Xiao Yin and Madame Shui, whose bodies were as soft as shrimps. Being young really was a good thing. Add that to the fact that he had great stamina, and Yang Chendong fought the 2 girls until they begged for mercy and fainted on the bed. He only rested for a short while before returning to the rear courtyard to continue training the 100 or so servants of the immortal abode. Compared to 2 days ago, these people had improved quite a bit. With the addition of Mu Lily as a manager, these people became much more obedient. Just as he was watching them train with satisfaction, Tiger's mane appeared. He half knelt and said, "Young master, Madame Xiang is here." Oh, so fast. Yang Chendong was satisfied with the other party's decisiveness. If there hadn't been any news from her, he would have had to consider whether or not to give up on her. Even though this girl who looked a lot like the young Guan Jilin of the future had indeed moved his heart, if she didn't want to rely on him, he wouldn't force her against her will. There were countless beautiful women in the world. How could he possibly have all of them? From Yang Chendong's point of view, there had to be a foundation of feelings between men and women. Otherwise, what difference would it be from going to the red light district to find a woman? Bring her to the side hall to wait, Yang Chendong instructed. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Madame Xiang and her maid, Chun Tao, arrived at the side hall in the rear courtyard. As soon as they sat down, the sound of footsteps could be heard nearby. It was Yang Chendong, dressed in green robes, walking in. When she saw Yang Chendong's figure from afar, Madame Xiang fell to her knees with a thump. As soon as the 6th young master entered the hall, her charming voice rang out. Dong Shui Xianger begs you to take me in. My older sister, Chui Na and my maid, Chun Tao, are also here. In the future, even if I have to work like a cow or a horse, I'll be satisfied with just a mouthful of rice to eat. You don't need to work like a cow or a horse. What you need to do is to rise above others. Yang Chundong replied firmly. Then, he looked at Tiger's Mane, who was standing in the hall. Do you know what to do? Also, after you take their slave contracts, find Mao Mu and tell him that you will raise their registration. Yes. Tiger's Mane cupped his fists and agreed. Then he stepped back. Madame Xiang and Chun Tao were left behind. They looked at Yang Chindong, who had just sat down, in surprise. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Yang Chindong was very puzzled. He thought that there was something on his face, so he touched it with his hand, but found nothing. Dong Shui, what did you just say? You said that you will raise our registration? Madame Shui looked at him in disbelief. She was afraid that she had misheard him. That's right. What's wrong? Didn't my fourth brother tell you? Alas, it's my fault. I didn't tell you clearly. Now I won't hide it from you. Madame Shui and the other two have been raised and have become good people. Yang Chindong thought about it. It seemed that he really didn't mention it to his fourth brother. He couldn't help but smile and didn't take it seriously. However, this was not a big deal in Yang Chindong's eyes. In Madame Xiang's eyes, it was completely different. If a lowly person wanted to raise their status, it was not only possible to spend a lot of money, but also needed the approval of the higher-ups. It even needed someone from the palace to do it. These conditions were far beyond their ability and they didn't dare to think about it. However, all of this seemed to be a piece of cake for Yang Chindong. He just needed to say a few words and someone would do it for him. This was the power of authority. It was far from something that ordinary people like them could imagine. After receiving Yang Chindong's affirmation, Madame Xiang immediately burst into tears of joy. Chun Tao, the maid beside her, also couldn't stop crying. Yang Chindong, on the other hand, hated seeing women cry the most. He couldn't quite accept it, so he found an excuse to get them to bring Chui Na over as well, and let Yang Si and Yang Wu follow them to do their errands. Tiger's Mane was very efficient. They received the order in the morning, and everything was done in the evening. They brought 3 new contracts with the official seal of the Ming dynasty. That was to say, from this moment on, Madame Xiang and the other two were free. They were no longer lowly people who were looked down upon by others. They were dignified girls from good families. The 3 of them hugged each other and cried for a long time. In the inner courtyard, Yang Chundong called Xiaoyin, Madame Shui, and Madame Xiang and told them the rules of the Yang family in front of them. Regardless of one's background, contribution and hard work were all important. As long as one was willing to put in the effort, they would be richly rewarded. On the other hand, if one wanted to use their status to bully others, then they should prepare to leave the Yang family. None of the 7 girls complained about this, and they all expressed that they would do their best. With the addition of Madame Shui and Madame Xiang, Yang Chindong's training program sped up, and everything proceeded smoothly. At this time, the interior of the immortal abode was in the final stages of its renovation, and it would be ready to open for business in half a month. The goods produced in Crimson City were transported by sea to Tientsin, where they would be transported to the capital. With Wang Zhen's help, the journey to the capital was smooth and unimpeded. A large number of goods were transported to the capital's immortal abode, and the 100 men and women who had been trained began to take up their posts. They used what they had learned to manage everything in an orderly fashion. Worth mentioning were the 2 leaders, Mu Lili and Chui Na. Their methods of management were far superior to Yang Chindong's. The 100 men were divided into 2 groups, each led by one of them. For a moment, there seemed to be competition between them, which greatly increased the efficiency of the work. They had originally thought that they would need another 7 or 8 days to sort everything out, but thanks to the efforts of the 2 former Procura sisters, they could open for business ahead of time. An auspicious date was chosen, and the opening was set for the 6th day of the 10th month. Yang Baozhong had already announced the opening of the immortal abode on the 6th day of the 10th month, and he had also emphasized that the immortal abode would be issuing membership cards to serve its esteemed guests. Only members would be allowed to use the private rooms on the second floor, and the private rooms on the first floor would allow them to enjoy a higher quality of service. Moreover, on the opening day of the immortal abode, members would be able to enjoy the festivities with the emperor and the various ministers, and they would be able to interact with the people up close. As for the specifics, they could consult the immortal abode. Chapter 98. As soon as the news spread, many people flocked to the immortal abode like a flock of ducks, especially wealthy merchants. They all came to the information desk outside the immortal abode to ask for advice. The person who received them was the immortal abode's external manager, Yang Fu. Using his silver tongue, he managed to sway everyone who came, telling them all about the benefits of a membership card. For example, a membership card was a symbol of one's status, allowing them to enjoy a higher level of service and be looked upon with respect. With a membership card, they could enter private rooms or private rooms on the second floor, allowing them to interact with even more important figures. With a membership card, once a friend came here and received it, it would be equivalent to gaining unparalleled face. They would be dazzled, and at the same time treat you with even more respect. More importantly, the money used to apply for a membership card wasn't given to the immortal abode. Instead, it was deposited here first, saving them the trouble of bringing large amounts of silver with them when they came out to spend. More importantly, with a membership card, they could also enjoy a discount when they spent money. In descending order, there were 4 types of cards: platinum card, gold card, and silver card. These could be bought with money. What couldn't be bought with money was the supreme card. With this card, spending was completely free. Of course, those who could obtain a supreme card were also not ordinary people. For example, up until now, the only person who had such a card was the real owner, Yang Qindong. Platinum card, a one-time deposit of 20,000 taels of silver. You could enter any private room on the second floor or private room on the first floor, and enjoy a 20% discount when you spent money. Gold card, a one-time deposit of 5,000 taels of silver. You could enter any private room on the second floor or private room on the first floor, and enjoy a 10% discount when you spent money. Silver card, a one-time deposit of 1,000 taels of silver. You could enter any private room on the first floor, but not the second floor, and enjoy a 5% discount when you spent money. As for non-members, but if they wanted to enter the immortal abode, they could only enter the main hall on the first floor. There were over 100 tables there, enough to accommodate over 1,000 people at once. However, no matter how lively the main hall was, if one didn't have a membership card, even if the private room on the first floor or the private room on the second floor were empty, they still weren't allowed to enter. This was the benefit of the membership system. All membership cards can be used to deduct the funds in the card when spending money. In other words, as long as you had a membership card, you could come to the immortal abode without bringing a single copper coin. After eating and drinking, you could just hand your membership card over to the waiter and register your bill. Just imagine how cool that would be. Of course, the membership card also had a minimum limit. That was, when the amount was less than 1/10 of the original amount, there would be a reminder to remind you that you had to top it up again. Using a silver card as an example, 1/10 of 1,000 taels of silver would be 100 taels of silver. When the balance of the card was less than 100 taels of silver, the service staff would remind you to top up the card so that you could continue using it. At the same time, you could top up more silver in one go to increase your membership level. For example, if a silver card member were to top up 5,000 taels of silver, he would be promoted to a gold card member. Of course, for those who refused to recharge, once the amount in the card was used up, the card would be cancelled after 3 months. If they wanted to recharge, they would have to apply again. If there was a deficit in the previous card, they would have to make up for it. After Yang Fu explained the situation in detail, many people were tempted, especially those merchants who had money but didn't have high statuses. In the Great Ming Dynasty, a merchant's residence was ranked 3rd. It was one level lower than the common people's residence, which was the so-called good family. People like them had a lot of money, but they didn't have high social status. The goal of many of them was to improve their social status by interacting more with the government. Now that the immortal abode had given them such an opportunity, how could these merchants, who wouldn't wake up early without benefits, not be tempted? Merchants were smart. It was precisely because of this that some people suggested that while the immortal abode's membership system seemed good, why didn't so many high officials and nobles come here to spend money? If only merchants came, then it would lose its original meaning. In response, Yang Fu confidently smiled and replied, "My lord has already sent gold cards to all officials of the third rank and above in the capital. Although it's a membership card that doesn't have a deposit amount, they can enjoy a 20% discount. I'm sure that they will definitely come. Moreover, when the immortal abode opens for business, even the emperor, empress, and officials will appear here. With this kind of influence, how could there be any worry that no officials will come? Here, there's singing and dancing, fine wine, and delicacies that can't be seen anywhere else. The environment is the best, and the service is the best. How could there be no customers?" When they heard that even the emperor would come here for the opening, the merchants were instantly filled with confidence. Those who paid to apply for membership cards came one after another. The Ming dynasty had just gone through the rule of literature, and the country was rich and the people were strong. Many merchants had plenty of money, so applying for a membership card wasn't a big deal. Those with money directly applied for platinum cards, while those with less money applied for gold cards. There were even some who applied for silver cards as a test. They wanted to see if the immortal abode was as good as Yang Fu said, and then consider adding more money to apply for a better membership card. In just 7 days, the first batch of members was tallied up. There were more than 40 people with platinum cards, and the value of the cards was more than 800,000 taels. There were more than 200 people with gold cards, and the value of the cards was more than 1 million taels. There were more than 400 people with silver cards, and the value of the cards was more than 400,000 taels. In just 7 days, more than 2 million taels had been raised. When news of this money-making speed spread, the entire capital was thrown into an uproar. It had to be known that the Ming dynasty had a very low tax rate, which was lower than the current 10% tax rate. In addition, the Ming dynasty's taxes didn't count as business taxes. In theory, business taxes went to the emperor's private funds, but because there was no strict policy, the emperor could only rely on eunuchs to collect them. As a result, it was very unstable. For example, the Wanli emperor's private funds were even richer than the national treasury. The Chongzhen emperor was as poor as a dog. As a result, the entire Ming dynasty's annual tax revenue was only 4 to 5 million taels. But before the immortal abode had even opened for business, it had already collected nearly half of that. How could anyone not be shocked? In the imperial palace, Wang Zhen was grinning from ear to ear after receiving the report from the Eastern Depot. He had originally been worried that the immortal abode wouldn't be able to bring him enough profit. But now, it seemed that he didn't need to worry at all. Wang Zhen immediately ordered the Eastern Depot and the embroidered uniform guard not to disturb the immortal abode in the future. On the contrary, they were to increase the patrols in the area, and if anyone was found to be causing trouble, they were to be immediately arrested. As a result, the immortal abode's business rose to another level. No one dared to mess around here, and no one dared to eat for free. With such a good environment, it would only attract more and more people. After several days of preparation, the day of the opening finally arrived. It was currently autumn in the capital, and the weather was cool and refreshing, neither hot nor cold. On the morning of the 6th day of the 10th lunar month, the area where Zhengyang Gate and Great Ming Gate intersected was bustling with activity. The current emperor, Zhu Qizhen, had already been informed of this matter. Thus, after the morning court session, the emperor, who had always wanted to have fun, led a group of civil and military officials from the imperial city to the outer city, their target the immortal abode. Unlike the emperor's usual excursions, Zhu Qizhen had brought Empress Qian Shi with him. This was something that Yang Chundong had specially invited. In his own words, this was called the emperor's family enjoying the pleasures of the common people. Wang Zhen was naturally in full agreement with this. With the binding of benefits, the greater the immortal abode's reputation, the more benefits he would receive in the future. In the Empress Palace, Qian Shi was rather excited. This was one of the rare occasions where she would accompany the emperor on an excursion. For this reason, she, who had never been good at dressing up, rummaged through her chests and drawers to find quite a few gold and silver ornaments. She had the palace maids help her try them on one by one, and in the end, she chose a dignified outfit. She wore a jade crown with dragon and phoenix pearls, a red robe with large sleeves, a red veil, a red silk skirt, and a red bead. Her hair was tied into a bun with dragon and phoenix ornaments, and the robe was embroidered with golden dragon and phoenix patterns. Such a dignified outfit was almost comparable to the one worn by the empress. Only then did Qian Shi walk out of the imperial palace satisfied. She boarded the dragon carriage and went with Zhu Qizhen to the immortal abode. When the emperor went on an excursion, his safety naturally had to be taken into consideration. Along the way, the embroidered uniform guards and foreigners from the Eastern Palace had long since filled the streets. Several thousand people had been mobilized, and their silhouettes filled the streets outside the immortal abode. Yang Qindong, who had already arrived at the immortal abode, didn't raise any objections. Although the appearance of the foreigners had prevented many commoners from approaching the immortal abode, this wasn't a place for commoners to spend their time. Besides, even though it was said to be enjoying the festivities with the commoners, there were too many commoners here, so there was no way to take care of their safety. If something were to happen, the reputation of the immortal abode would be completely ruined. Since the commoners couldn't get close, the area in front of the immortal abode was much more spacious. A red carpet over 100 meters long had already been laid out here. It was extremely eye-catching from a distance. This was the arrangement Yang Qindong had made to welcome the emperor. As they walked the red carpet all the way to the immortal abode, they basked in the attention of tens of thousands of people. The spectators had been changed from officials to commoners. By the time the emperor's dragon carriage arrived at the end of the red carpet, Yang Qindong was already waiting there in his green robes. In the entire court, it seemed that Yang Qindong was the only one who didn't wear his official robes and only wore his green robes. Everyone else was afraid that others wouldn't know his identity. Only this young master didn't care about what others thought of him. He continued to act according to his own wishes. This subject kneels to welcome your majesty, your majesty, your majesty. May your majesty live for 10,000 years. Please descend from the carriage and walk, Yang Qindong said in a booming voice as he knelt on the red carpet. Chapter 99. If it was any other time, this would be considered as blocking the emperor's way. But today, no matter if it was the palace guards or the ministers, no one tried to stop it. It was as if everything was perfectly justified. It's Minister Yang. Since that's the case, Empress, let's get off the carriage together and see what tricks he's up to. Ingzong Zhu Qizhen seemed to be in a good mood. As he laughed, he helped Empress Qian onto the dragon carriage and walked onto the red carpet. Long live the emperor! Just as they stood firmly on the ground, shouts sounded from all around them. A group of commoners who came to watch the show instinctively knelt on the ground the moment they saw the emperor's face. In addition, there were many people that Yang Qindong had arranged to guide the crowd. Instantly, shouts of "Long live the emperor" rang out from all directions. The momentum was so great that it was much louder than the voices of the ministers in the imperial court. First, Ingzong was shocked. He instinctively thought that there was some kind of danger and wanted to turn around and run. However, when he saw that it was the crowd cheering for him, he laughed and then raised his hand generously to the crowd. Everyone, please rise. Thank you for your majesty. The crowd of commoners who came to watch the show climbed up from the ground and looked at Zhu Qizhen excitedly. Their expressions were filled with admiration and admiration. But more than that, it was envy. Zhu Qizhen seemed to enjoy this kind of gaze. He did not move quickly. It felt as if he was taking care of Empress Qian, but in reality he was enjoying this moment of being the center of attention. Yang Qindong acted as if he did not know about this. He led the way in front and looked left and right from time to time. He used his insight to see if there was any danger in the surroundings. Even though the area was already filled with spies from the Eastern Faction Guards and the embroidered uniform guards, and the Security Bureau had also sent out quite a few people, it was better to be safe than sorry. If something really happened to Ing Zong today, even if he didn't flee, he would still revolt. Fortunately, no accidents happened along the way. Even though the people were curious about what the emperor looked like, under the stern gazes of the Eastern Faction Guards, the embroidered uniform guards, and the warden's office of the 5 cities, no one had the courage to break the order and cause trouble. Ing Zong held Empress Qian's hand and walked forward step by step. Along the way, he frequently raised his hand to the people around him to show off his might as the Son of Heaven. Just like that, when they were halfway through the journey, shouts suddenly sounded from all directions, completely drowning out the noisy discussions around them. In our great Ming dynasty, the mountains are the lofty heads. In our great Ming dynasty, the rivers flow like hot blood. In our great Ming dynasty, the trees are rooted to the ground. In our great Ming dynasty, the clouds hold hands. The vast plains are wrapped with jade belts. The fields are woven with colored silk. The winds of the great Ming rise. The mighty winds of the great Ming shake the heavens and roar. As soon as the majestic voice rang out, everyone was startled at first. Then General Fan Zhong rushed out from the side to protect the emperor. Even Empress Qian turned pale at this moment. On the other hand, Ing Zong, Zhu Qizhen, was surprised at first, but when he understood what everyone was singing, he suddenly burst into laughter. Good! What a mighty and majestic voice! What a good song! Beloved official Yang, is this the new song the people were talking about? Yang Chendong sighed in admiration. As expected of the emperor, his reactions were quick, and his composure was extraordinary. He strode over and said, "Your Majesty, this is the new song this subject composed. It's called Our Great Ming Dynasty. Our Great Ming Dynasty is a good song. Good, good. You deserve a reward." When Zhu Qizhen heard the 50 male attendants of the immortal abode singing the song together with the crowd, he was extremely happy. He even shouted out a good twice. "Thank you for your reward, Your Majesty." Yang Chendong was also overjoyed. He thanked the emperor on behalf of the 50 attendants. Ha ha ha! Not bad, not bad. A song of praise made Zhu Qizhen very happy. His footsteps seemed to be much lighter as he continued walking. Our great Ming dynasty has many beautiful mountains and rivers. Our great Ming dynasty is rich in natural resources. Our great Ming dynasty's people are the most hardworking. Our great Ming dynasty is even more outstanding now. The 4 seas meet guests. The 5 continents make friends. The winds of the great Ming dynasty rise. The mighty winds of the great Ming dynasty shake the heavens. Along the way, Zhu Qizhen could hear the singing of our great Ming dynasty. He felt as if he was floating in the air. It wasn't just the emperor who felt this way. Even the officials following behind him felt their spirits lifted when they heard this majestic song. Some of the officials who were originally disdainful of the so-called new song began to pay attention to it at this moment. Only now did they realize that if a song was well composed, it might really be able to stir the hearts of people. Our great Ming dynasty was sung over and over again. By the 3rd time it was sung, Ing Zong and Empress Qian had already arrived in front of the immortal abode's gates. The entire area was covered in red silk, making it look like a sea of red. Your Majesty, this subject will be so bold as to invite the 2 of you to cut the ribbon. In addition, I would like to invite Lord Hu Mang to come forward as well. Yang Chendong knelt on the ground again and begged loudly. Cut the ribbon? What's the meaning behind that? Ing Zong asked curiously. Your Majesty, cutting the ribbon means cutting the ribbon. It's an auspicious omen for the opening of a new store. Yang Chendong replied with a smile. Interesting. Beloved official Yang, please make the arrangements. Ing Zong also wanted to see what cutting the ribbon was, so he immediately agreed. Since the emperor had already agreed, the empress naturally nodded with a smile as well. Empress Qian was also a beauty of her generation, and she was also of noble character. Since the 2 of them had agreed, the Minister of Rights, Hu Mang, naturally couldn't refuse either. Dressed in the robes of a standard second-rank official, he strode over to the ribbon-cutting stage in front of the immortal abode. In front of a window on the second floor of the immortal abode, a young girl saw Hu Meng walk onto the stage. She immediately shouted excitedly, Young Miss, look, Lord Hu Meng is also on stage. He's standing right next to His Majesty." "That's enough, I saw it. Also, little Qing, can you not be so excited here? If someone hears you, they'll say that the women of the Hu clan have no manners." Hu Yanxiang, who was called Miss, pretended to be angry and glared at her maid Xiaoqing. Then she looked at the ribbon-cutting stage with a sweet face. When she saw that there were only the emperor, the empress, her grandfather, and Yang Chundong on the stage, her face was full of joy. Out of so many ministers, only his grandfather was called to the stage. Was this hinting at something? Hu Yan thought she was smart. She thought this was Yang Chundong's intentional arrangement. He wanted to raise her grandfather's prestige, and at the same time, express his special feelings for the Hu clan. This moved her greatly, but also made her regret it. What made her regret was that she only found out about Yang Chundong's assassination a long time later. Hu Zhongning knew his daughter's temperament, so he gave strict orders that no one was to speak of it. It wasn't until later, when Hu Yan went to visit Yang Duo, that she found out. She was so worried she cried. She even pestered her seventh sister to go to the Yang Chundong manor. Only when she saw that Yang Chundong was still as lively as ever did she finally relax. As someone who had been there before, how could Yang Duo not see Hu Yan's feelings for her seventh brother? She immediately smiled and told her seventh brother to give Hu Yan a gift. Her worries weren't in vain. Yang Chundong thought for a moment, then gave the most prestigious card in the immortal abode to Hu Yan. He even invited her to attend the opening ceremony of the immortal abode. With this card, Hu Yan had special privileges. Before the immortal abode was open to the public, she had the right to enter in advance. As a result, she was the first to witness the prosperity of the immortal abode. Today, she even brought her servant little Qing with her to the second floor of the immortal abode. She found the best vantage point to watch the opening ceremony. Hu Yan's heart was filled with sweetness. However, what she didn't know was that Yang Chundong hadn't invited Hu Yan to the stage because of her. Instead, it was because Hu Yan was the oldest among the civil officials. He was already 73 years old. Out of respect for the elderly and love for the young, he invited Hu Yan to the stage. In truth, Yang Chundong had also wanted to invite Duke Ying Zhangfu to the stage. He was already 73 years old, but after considering that he didn't get along with Wang Zhan and the others, he didn't want to cause any more trouble. On the stage, Ying Zong, Empress Qian, Hu Yan, and Yang Chundong had just taken their places when four women in kipeos walked out of the immortal abode's main entrance. They were Yang Duo, Chao Yin, Lady Shui, and Lady Xiang. The four of them were all extremely beautiful. Coupled with their exquisite cheongsams, they attracted everyone's attention as soon as they appeared. The four women looked like celestial fairies. Each of them carried a copper tray with a pair of scissors on it. These were the props used for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Wow, they're so beautiful. What are they wearing? How can their figures be so perfect? That's right. If my concubines wore these clothes, wouldn't they be just as beautiful? Faced with this kind of discussion, someone in the crowd quickly responded. These clothes are called kipeos. They're already on sale at the Sky Beyond Trading Company next to the Immortal Abode. Even if you have finished products, you can also customize them. Is that so? Our great Ming Dynasty also has something like this for sale? That's great. I'll go take a look at the Sky Beyond Trading Company when I get back. After receiving this response, some of the men in the crowd became even more excited. They were already imagining what their wives would look like if they put on these beautiful kipeos. These kinds of discussions and responses could be seen everywhere in the crowd. The people from the security bureau had all become salesmen, working hard for the Sky Beyond Trading Company's future prosperity. At this time, everyone's attention had already shifted from the emperor and empress to Chao Yin and the other three women. The appearance of the four women not only attracted the gazes of the spectators, Even Yingzong and Empress Qin, who were standing on the ceremonial stage, looked at the four women with great interest. However, their eyes were filled with a kind of admiration. Chapter 100. We can begin now. He didn't want to draw too much attention to the four women. 3 of them were his women, and 1 of them was his older sister. He didn't like being watched and taken advantage of like this, so he urged them to begin. On the 2nd floor of the immortal abode, little Qing was chattering away. Young miss, their clothes are so beautiful. They're just as beautiful as the one you brought back. Hu Yen replied absent-mindedly. However, she was thinking that if she was already Yang Qindong's woman, she would definitely have a seat on the ceremonial stage right now. Under Yang Qindong's urging, the ribbon-cutting began. Yingzong and the other 3 each held a pair of scissors and cut the red silk in their hands. The immortal abode's workers, who had been arranged beforehand, removed the red silk covering the 3 words, immortal abode. Not only that, but the originally red immortal abode suddenly changed. The red disappeared without a trace, and was replaced by a bright, transparent, and sturdy-looking glass. It turned out that the red silk wasn't covering the outside of the immortal abode, but rather the inside. When the red curtains were pulled open from the inside, what was revealed was the clear, transparent glass. The current Great Ming Empire only produced colored glass, and the quality wasn't all that great either. The sudden appearance of so many pieces of glass, and so many of them at that, actually covered the entire immortal abode. It was easy to imagine just how shocking this was. Beloved official Yang, what is this? Yingzong pointed at the clear glass with an expression of shock. Replying, Your Majesty, this item is called glass, and it came from overseas. It is transparent and can be seen from the inside, and can also be seen from the outside. It also has the ability to block wind and rain. When used in a room, it can allow light from the outside to enter the room, making it much brighter. In winter, it can even allow sunlight to enter the room, making it much warmer. Yang Qindong had long since expected this question, so he gave a simple answer. Good stuff. Yingzong couldn't help but sigh after hearing this. It's a good thing, but it's a bit too expensive. Just the glass used to decorate the immortal abode alone cost over 100,000 taels of silver. If the scale of the project is even larger, I'm afraid the cost will only increase. Yang Qindong was afraid that Yingzong would ask for an exorbitant price and wanted to use glass to decorate the palace. Therefore, he immediately asked the question. Sure enough, after hearing how expensive this thing was, just the immortal abode alone cost over 100,000 taels of silver. If it were to be installed in the entire imperial palace, even tens of millions of taels wouldn't be enough. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Then he turned to Hu Ming and said, Minister Hu, go back and supervise the Ministry of Works. See if they can produce such transparent glass. Yes, Your Majesty. Even though he wasn't the Minister of Works, Hu Shao still felt that the possibility of him creating one was too low. But since the Emperor had spoken, he naturally had to agree first. All right, Your Majesty. Now, please enter the main hall of the immortal abode. There is still a program waiting for Your Majesty's personal evaluation. Yang Qindong didn't want to waste too much time on the matter of glass. He immediately invited the Emperor and Empress inside. Understood. As soon as he heard that there was still a program, Yingzong immediately ignored the matter at hand. With a smile, he walked with the Empress into the immortal abode. While the officials were still curious about the effects of the glass and how it was produced, they saw the Emperor enter the immortal abode. One by one, they followed him in. As soon as they entered the main hall, they were greeted by the sight of a glass tower that made them gasp in surprise. Calling it a glass tower wasn't correct. It was more like a champagne tower. There were 5 floors in total, divided into a triangular shape. There were 35 transparent champagne glasses arranged on each floor. At the very top, there was only one glass. The further down one went, the more glasses there were. Beloved Minister Yang, what is this? Yingzong pointed at the transparent and exquisite glass tower with a curious expression. He'd originally thought that as the Emperor, He was already used to seeing all sorts of strange things in the world. However, after coming to the immortal abode today, he finally realized that there was no limit in the universe. Your Majesty, this is called a champagne tower. There are 5 floors in total, and the meaning behind it is that Your Majesty is the supreme ruler of the world. At that time, when the champagne is poured from the top, the drink will flow down from the first cup at the top until all the cups are filled with champagne. Yang Qindong explained in detail, causing Ying Zong's eyes to brighten up. His curiosity was also piqued. Beloved Minister Yang, is there any explanation for pouring the champagne you speak of? Is it possible for us to do what we wish to do? Ying Zong asked playfully. Naturally. Your Majesty is the supreme ruler of the world, so this matter should naturally be left to you. Servants, bring out the champagne. Yang Qindong laughed heartily as he waved his hand. A female attendant dressed in a black qipao immediately walked over and placed several large champagne bottles in front of the 6th young master. Yang Qindong handed a bottle filled with champagne to Ying Zong and said respectfully, Your Majesty, please. He'd only asked out of curiosity. He hadn't expected Yang Qindong to agree so quickly. Now that he noticed that the officials had already walked into the hall, if he slipped up and spilled the champagne everywhere, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? Ying Zong was a bit hesitant and didn't immediately take the bottle. Yang Qindong seemed to have noticed the emperor's awkwardness. He smiled and said, This subject is so bold as to ask Your Majesty, Empress, and this subject to do this together. This was equivalent to sharing the risk. If something went wrong, they could push the blame onto Yang Qindong. Ying Zong was overjoyed when he heard this. Today is an auspicious day for the immortal abode's grand opening. Everything will naturally be decided by Minister Yang. We will allow it. Thank you, Your Majesty. Yang Qindong had a flattered expression. Then he took 2 more champagne bottles. After the 3 of them took one each, they stood in 3 different directions. Then they raised the bottle and poured the champagne into the first glass on the champagne tower. Empress Qian and Ying Zong imitated Yang Qindong's actions. They also raised their champagne bottles and poured the champagne into the tower. Pure champagne immediately flowed out, releasing a fragrant aroma and covering the entire tower like flowing water. The sparkling and translucent champagne flowed like a waterfall, covering every single glass and filling it to the brim. This scene caused the officials to cry out in surprise and cheers. Yang Qindong had already tested this champagne tower countless times to ensure its safety. So, regardless of whether this was the first time it was poured or not, there wouldn't be any problems. At first, Ying Zong was very careful when pouring the champagne. However, after discovering that there were no problems, his courage grew, and he poured the champagne much faster. In the end, he was actually the first one to finish. Naturally, Wang Zhen and the others cheered loudly. After Empress Qian and Yang Qindong finished pouring the champagne in their hands, the 25 glasses in the tower were filled to the brim. Then, the 6th young master asked the emperor to take the first glass at the top. Empress Qian took the second glass, and Yang Qindong took the third. The other officials also stepped forward and took the 25 glasses according to their rank. Even so, there were still some officials who didn't get a glass of champagne. However, it was fine. Yang Qindong was already prepared. He waved his hand in the distance, and a row of male and female service staff wearing black waistcoats and black cheongsams walked over. Each of them held a silver platter in their hands, and on the platter was filled with champagne. Soon, everyone had a glass of champagne in their hands. Yang Qindong saw that the time was right, so he raised his glass and said loudly, For the prosperity of the great Ming dynasty, I invite everyone to drink this glass. Your Majesty, please. Please, everyone, let's drink together. Ying Zong was in a good mood. He laughed and raised the champagne in his hand. Your Majesty, please. The officials also gave him face and drank in unison. Then they poured the champagne in their hands into their mouths. When it entered their mouth, it was sweet and refreshing. The taste was very comfortable, and after drinking it, everyone had a lingering aftertaste. Not bad. This thing tastes very good. Ying Zong had eaten all kinds of delicacies in the world, It was already not easy for him to give such an evaluation after drinking the champagne. Of course, with Ing Zong's evaluation, it would be difficult to sell champagne in the future. After the champagne celebration, Yang Chendong personally led the emperor and empress to the second floor of the immortal abode. The other officials of the third rank and above were led there by the service staff. Those of the third rank and below could only stay on the first floor. Fortunately, they weren't receiving outsiders today, so the place was quite spacious. The private rooms could be filled as many people as they wanted. On the second floor, Yang Chendong led Ing Zong to a private room with the best view on the left. The room was about 70 to 80 square meters in size, and it even had a private washroom. There was a soft sofa, a wine cabinet, a table, and chairs, as well as a bell tied to a string. Ing Zong pointed at the bell and asked curiously, "What's this used for?" Replying to your majesty, "This is a bell. If there is any need, as long as you pull it gently, there will soon be service personnel outside." Yang Chendong reached out with a smile and pulled it casually. Immediately, a crisp bell sounded. Not long after, a voluptuous female attendant dressed in a black qipao walked in. "How may I help you, esteemed guest?" "Tell Madame Shui to prepare a song and a performance," Yang Chendong said with a smile as he watched the female attendant walk in. "Yes." After answering, the female attendant left, swaying her hips. Ing Zong, who was watching from the side, nodded repeatedly. "Not bad, not bad. This is a good idea. Sir, we can also put something like this in our study. It will be much more convenient if we need someone to wait on us." Chapter 101. This servant obeys. Wang Zhen, who was serving at the side, hurriedly replied. On the other side, in the best private room on the right side of the second floor, Yang Chendong's eldest sister, Yang Fei, was accompanying Emperor Qian on the soft sofa and chatting. Yang Fei's health was not very good recently. Yang Chendong had been in the capital for a period of time, but he had not had the time to visit her. It was only when she had recovered recently that he could leave. Then, he would arrange such a mission to accompany Emperor Qian. As the eldest daughter of Yang Rong, Yang Fei was already 40 years old. However, because she had taken good care of herself and had inherited her mother's good looks, she looked graceful and luxurious. Sitting together with Emperor Qian, they could chat together. Similar to the men's private room, there was a separate bathroom and soft sofa. But what was missing was the wine cabinet, and what was replaced was an indoor swing. In this place, there was no wind or rain, and no one would notice, so they could swing as they pleased. It made people feel relaxed and happy. In addition, there was an extra chess table which could be placed on several types of chess for people to use. If the guest needed it, they just had to pull the bell, and the service staff would send the required chess into the private room. For example, there was checkers. It was a type of chess that could be played by 2 to 6 people at the same time. The chessboard was hexagonal, and the chess pieces were divided into 6 colors. Each color had 10 or 15 chess pieces, and each player occupied a corner and had a chess piece of one color. Checkers was a board game that was widely spread and suitable for all ages. Gamoku. Not only could Gamoku strengthen one's thinking ability and raise one's intelligence, but it was also rich in philosophy and helped to cultivate one's mind. Moreover, the game was simple. As long as the 5 pieces were connected together, the horizontal and vertical lines could be counted. Modern poker and mahjong. These quickly became one of the favorite programs of the VIPs. At the same time, in order to take care of women, there were many drinks that women could eat on the menu. Men mainly drank tea and wine. Tea drinks, including single tea leaves and tea drinks prepared based on them. For example, ancient tea, bubble black tea, milk tea, fruit tea, etc. For example, Tiguanyin, Dahongpo, Longan red date tea, pearl milk tea, etc. Compared to that time, there were now beer and red wine. Beer was mainly made from sprouted barley or wheat, also known as malt. Red wine was mainly made from grapes, salt, and sugar. Far away in Crimson City, there was already a winery. Currently, it had been successfully developed and was in the midst of mass production. When they opened for business, the first batch of wine arrived. Although the quantity was still not a lot, the price was high, so it was barely enough. When the production was expanded in the future, the problem of quantity would naturally not be a problem. Presumably, at that price, most people would only be able to taste it. Not many people would be willing to spend so much money to reach a certain level. There were even more types of women in this aspect, and they were mainly divided into 4 categories. Layered drinks, 30 g of seedless melon pulp, 20 g of pineapple jam, 10 g of milk. He squeezed the watermelon juice and poured it into a cup. Add a little water to the pineapple jam and squeeze the juice. Take a clean glass and fill it with ice cubes. When all the ingredients are ready, pour all the ice cubes out of the glass and pour the milk into the glass slowly. It's best not to pour it on the glass wall. Then, use a spoon to slowly pour the watermelon juice into the glass, and finally the pineapple juice into the glass. This way, the layered drinks were completed. The most important thing was that the density was controlled well. Carbonated drinks, or soft drinks, as they were commonly known. For example, cola, Sprite, soda water, etc. They were named Coca-Cola, Gianlibo, etc. Fruit and vegetable juices. Based on their characteristics, they could be divided into concentrated fruit juices, syrup juice, freshly squeezed fruit juices, diluted fruit juices, etc. They were named apple juice, orange juice, peach juice, etc. Milk drinks were drinks that contained a certain amount of fat and were made from it. For example, milk, soy milk, milkshakes, etc. They were named fresh milk, raw milk, sweet milk, walnut milk, and so on. There were already so many variations on the drinks, let alone the food. With the help of MSG, cooking wine, meat powder, and other condiments, the immortal abode's food was even better than the palace's. Of course, from time to time, Yang Chandong would also send some MSG over. After all, if one's life was better than the emperor's, then it would be dangerous. Sai, my 6th brother, has always liked to mess around since he was young. Look at all the things he's made. As his big sister, I don't even know what to say. Yang Fei smiled helplessly as she looked at the menu of food and drinks. But if one looked closely, they would be able to see the pride and gratification in her eyes. Of course, as his big sister, she had also thought about Yang Chandong's changes. When he was young, her 6th brother was the most honest of people, the type who only knew how to study every day. But after he grew up, he changed so much that she couldn't recognize him. Fortunately, one was married in the capital, while the other was living in the Yang clan's old residence in Jianing Prefecture. After not seeing each other for so many years, it was normal for people to change. Even though Yang Fei spoke of helplessness, her face was filled with pride. When Empress Qian saw this, she smiled and said, "Yang Shima is a man of good fortune." As soon as he arrived in the capital, he brought the great Ming's auspicious potato. Now he's created this immortal abode. He truly is a man of ability. Even His Majesty praises him from time to time. That's because of His Majesty and Empress Qian's good fortune. How could it be the work of a little brat like him? Yang Fei naturally didn't dare take credit for her 6th brother. The current world was under the rule of the Zhu clan. It was only right for them to be respected. By the way, Madame Wang, Yang Fei is married to Wang Meng. Is Yang Shima married yet? Empress Qian asked casually. Perhaps this was a common problem for women. When they gathered together, they would always gossip about others. I really didn't ask him, but I don't think so. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept such an important matter from me. His big sister, Yang Fei said with a smile. Her little brother had grown up and was about to start a family. He was no longer the snot-nosed brat of the past. Not far from the Empress' private room, Yang Duo and Hu Yen had also reserved a room. The two of them had already lost count of how many times they'd rung the bell. There were many empty cups in front of them, and they looked like they wanted to try all of the drinks in the immortal abode today. I can't anymore, big sister Duo. I can't drink anymore. Hu Yen rubbed her round belly as she sat on the sofa and weakly shook her head. Her eyes were big, but her belly was small. She'd originally thought that she had some strength, but when she really started drinking, she realized that these things were really bloating. Even though there was a bathroom in the private room, she still ended up drinking until she was full. No matter how good the drinks were, she could only sigh. I can't either. Young Duo also shook her head and sat down on the sofa. Then her body half collapsed. These things are too delicious. I don't want to give up on any of them, but I can't finish any of them. I can't continue to waste them like this. Hu Yen couldn't help but laugh when she saw the usually dignified Young Duo acting like a little girl. Big sister Duo, you're still afraid of wasting things? With such a capable little brother, you don't have to worry at all. That's enough. Are you praising me? Or are you scolding me? I'm basking in your glory today. If you didn't have a supreme card, we wouldn't be wasting things like this. Oh right. Even I, as your big sister, only have a gold card with 5,000 taels of silver in it. How did you get a supreme card that doesn't cost you anything? Yang Duo retorted. At the same time, she stared at Hu Yen, waiting to see how she would respond. Big sister Duo, what are you talking about? Hu Yan's face instantly turned red after being hit on her soft spot. Right at this moment, the sound of music came from the stage on the first floor. Hu Yen used this as an excuse to lean against the transparent window and look down. She could see everything on the stage clearly, so she said, Big sister Duo, the performance is about to start. Let's watch it together. This little girl. Seeing that Hu Yen didn't answer her question, Yang Duo let her off for now. She sat on the indoor swing and watched the performance on the stage. The stage on the first floor was about 400 square meters. It was much bigger than the one in 9 Arts Workshop and 100 Flowers Hall. At this moment, a group of girls in gorgeous dresses walked up the stage. They were all sisters invited by Lady Shui and Lady Xiang to help out. They all had a foundation in dancing. Of course, they also became talents in Yang Qindong's eyes. It wouldn't be long before they became part of the Yang Manor. The girls surrounded Lady Shui, who was wearing a festive red cheongsam, as she walked up the stage. She looked like a red flower set off by the green grass. She was so beautiful and beautiful at this moment. Wow, she's so beautiful. After seeing Lady Shui's new outfit, the people upstairs and downstairs couldn't help exclaiming. Even in the private room where the emperor was, Zhu Qizhen kept nodding. He asked Wang Jin, Sir, is it because of this woman that Shi Sheng wants to kill Yang Shima? Yes. Hearing this, Wang Jin felt cold sweat trickling down his forehead. After that incident, Yang Chendong said that he wouldn't pursue the matter. Wang Jin locked Shi Sheng up for a while and then let him out. That night, his right leg was chopped off by Hu Chongning, the town supervisor of the embroidered uniform guard, who was in a hurry to save someone. Because he didn't respond in time when he came out, his legs were unevenly spaced, and he walked with a slight limp, becoming a real slope. This made Shi Ning very unhappy. He once told others that if he had the chance, he would teach Yang Chendong a lesson and make him like this to vent his anger. Chapter 102. Now that His Majesty suddenly asked about this matter, Wang Zhen's heart was startled. Ingzong hadn't asked about this matter since he'd handed it over to him. But who knew if the emperor was paying attention? Even an idiot could tell that the immortal abode was going to be a place of great wealth in the future. As a collaborator, he was sure to earn quite a bit. Even if it was for his own sake, he had to ensure Yang Qindong's safety. From the looks of it, he needed to remind Shi Ning not to go overboard. Otherwise, it wouldn't look good on everyone. When Ingzong heard Wang Zhen's ambiguous answer, he smiled and said, This girl is so beautiful. It must be said that this Yang Shima has profited from a disaster. It's not wrong for him to suffer a blade for this matter. Yes, your Majesty is right. One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. Wang Zhen nodded and bowed in agreement. On the stage below, the dancers took their positions and made their preparations. All sorts of joyous music rang out. After a joyous prelude that no one had ever heard before, Madame Shui finally opened her mouth and sang loudly, AI! Happy gongs and drums bring out the annual festivities. Beautiful dances bring out the jubilation of the solitary sky plains. The sun paints today red, and the flowers of life are our smiles. AI! Today is a good day. Anything you wish for can come true. Tomorrow is a good day. When we open our doors, We welcome the spring breeze. The song was cheerful and bright. The theme was clear, and the meaning was clear. As soon as the song was played, everyone who heard it couldn't help but nod their heads. Choosing such a new song as the opening dance was just perfect. Coupled with the dance of those dancers, it gave people a visual impact and enjoyment. It was indeed the most appropriate scene. Madame Shui was also extremely excited. Wasn't this a performance for the emperor and all the other officials? Back when she was in Hundred Flowers Hall, these people couldn't come because of their status. Even the fragrance of wine was afraid of the depth of the alley. But now, with the immortal abode as a platform, not only did they not feel the slightest bit embarrassed, they even felt honored. Things were just that miraculous. After the sixth young master took care of it, it was still the same thing, but it had a different ending and influence. Madame Shui was so excited that she tried her best to sing the song. She made the song sound festive, which attracted the applause of the people upstairs and downstairs. Some of the young officials were so happy that they even forgot that the emperor was not far away. They kept shouting that they wanted to reward them. It wasn't until one of their colleagues reminded them that they remembered that they were in the immortal abode, not the red light district they frequented. They all broke out in cold sweat, which made them look rather cute. In less than a cup of tea's time, the song ended. Madame Shui bowed to the audience upstairs and downstairs to express her gratitude, and then left the stage. Soon, two waiters in black jackets placed a small square table on the grandstand. There was a fan on the table, which was very eye-catching. It was time to prepare for the storytelling. But at that time, people had never seen such a thing. Storytelling was also a product of the late Qing and early Ming dynasties. For a time, no one knew what it was for. They didn't recall seeing anything like this in the repertoire they'd seen before. Just when everyone had not completely recovered from the good days and did not understand what was going to happen next, Yang Chendong strode onto the stage in a black robe. Yang Chendong's appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone couldn't help but wonder, what's going on? Could it be that Yang Shima was going to perform like an actor? Is he really going to disregard his status like this? People's views were the hardest to change. Even after seeing how different the immortal abode was, it was still the same. Yang Chendong was already prepared for this, so he didn't bother to explain himself. He strode onto the stage and stood behind the small table. Then he reached out and grabbed the table. He raised it up high and smashed it down. Bang! The sound of the impact jolted many people out of their reverie. Today, the emperor, empress, and hundreds of officials have come to congratulate the immortal abode on its grand opening. In order to express his gratitude, Chen Dong decided to tell a story. Whether it was right or wrong will depend on the benevolent and the wise. All right, let's begin. He brought up the emperor, saying that he was only going on stage because Ingzong was here. For a moment, no one could criticize him. As everyone's attention fell on Yang Chendong, wanting to see what kind of trick he was going to play, the table was smashed down again. Dow to 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, scholarly fame, Empress Xia, Empress Shang and Zhou. The 5 hegemons of heroes and hegemons of spring and autumn rise and fall in an instant. A few lines of names in the history of the Qing dynasty, countless barren hills in the northern sea. The fields of the predecessors, the lands of the descendants, are said to be a fierce struggle between dragons and tigers. There was a pause as soon as the word battle was spoken. Yang Fu, who had long since prepared himself, led a group of attendants to applaud and cheer loudly. Good! With someone leading the way, a few of the officials were also shocked by the opening poem. They all began to cheer in unison. Yang Chendong began to speak amidst the cheers. Starting today, we will talk about the 3 kingdoms. The first chapter is called The Great River Flows East. What era was the 3 kingdoms? It was an era of turmoil and suffering, but it was also an era of heroes. We know that ever since Qin Shi Huang annexed the world, a unified country was established in this place. The Qin and Han dynasties were both unified countries. At the end of the Eastern Han dynasty, before the unification of the Western Jin dynasty, there was a special period. This is what we usually call the 3 kingdoms. Cao Cao once wrote a poem about this era. White bones are exposed in the wild, and there are no chickens for 1,000 miles. But at the same time it was also an era of heroes. Only when the sea was turbulent can the true colors of heroes be revealed. In such an era, many people sacrificed their intelligence for the reunification of the country. For example, the ambitious and bold Cao Cao, the dedicated Zhuge Liang, the elegant and carefree Zhou Yu, the tenacious Liu Bei. As soon as Yang Chundong spoke, the people who did not understand what he was going to do immediately quieted down. They could tell that this was the story that the sixth young master was going to tell. Moreover, he was going to tell it in a way that they had never seen before. But it had to be said that this kind of format was very attractive. In less than a quarter of an hour, Yang Chundong began to immerse himself in the history of the three kingdoms. The entire immortal abode quieted down. Everyone's thoughts seemed to be driven by his mouth. Even some of the women who did not like history listened attentively. On the second floor, in the private room where Hu Yen was, the maid Xiaoqing could not help saying as she looked at the young lady who was staring at Yang Chundong through the glass. Dong Shuai is so impressive. He speaks so well. Even I can understand a lot of things. Don't say anything. Hu Yen suddenly turned around and gestured for Xiaoqing to keep quiet, giving her a fright. After turning around, Hu Yen turned around and stared out the glass again. Her face was filled with admiration, longing, and even pride. This was the man she liked. He would always be the best and most outstanding. In the immortal abode, Hu Yen wasn't the only one. There were also a few of the family members of the officials who had been invited, especially the unmarried girls. They were all staring at Yang Chundong with wide eyes. It had to be said that having a private room and glass was a good thing. They didn't have to worry about others seeing them. Their gazes could become unbridled. To hell with the gentlemanly behavior of a gentleman. Of the many girls present, it was inevitable that some of them would fall in love. Some of them had already decided that when they returned, they would beg their parents to send someone to the Yang clan to propose marriage. There were many times when women were just like men. When they took the initiative, it was quite frightening. Following Yang Chundong's analysis of the history and characters of the three kingdoms from shallow to deep, everyone watched with relish. Even Zhu Qizhen of the Ying sect was completely captivated. As the emperor of a country, familiarizing oneself with history was a compulsory course. The ancestors had long ago passed down a message that history could be used as a mirror to determine the rise and fall of a country. However, what he had learned was the rigid teachings of those teachers. What he had learned was dry and dull. How could he possibly compare to Yang Chundong's? His explanations were so interesting and easy to understand. Sigh. If I had such a teacher back then, I don't think my studies would be so boring. Ingzong sighed as if he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Your Majesty, why don't we have Yang Shima speak to you alone in the palace? Wang Jin felt that this was an opportunity to curry favor. How could he let it slip by? As expected, Ingzong was a little tempted. However, he quickly shook his head. Forget it. Yang Shima isn't even as old as us. There's no need to bring this up again in the future. Only now did Wang Jun remember Yang Chundong's age. However, with his vast knowledge and steady temperament, it was easy to forget his age. It was this servant who was impetuous, thinking that if Yang Chundong really became the emperor's teacher, the emperor's incompetence would be even more obvious. Thus, Wang Jun quickly nipped this idea in the back of his head. On the stage, the first chapter, The Great River Flows to the East, was finally finished. Yang Chundong bowed and stepped down from the stage with a sentence. If you want to know what will happen later, please listen to the next chapter. Good. One more chapter. An addicted official saw that Yang Chundong was about to leave the stage and hurriedly shouted, "One more chapter! One more chapter!" For a moment, there were many people who wanted to follow the trend and continue listening. Regarding this, Yang Chundong stopped in his tracks. He smiled and cupped his fists towards the crowd. As I said earlier, it's because the emperor is here that I came out to embarrass myself. If everyone still wants to continue listening, from tomorrow onwards, there will be other people who will continue telling the story of the three kingdoms. At that time, everyone can come and support me. Chundong thanks you here. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.